Chapter 999. What a brilliant plan. Chu Yang slapped his thigh and said hesitantly, Then, isn't it too immoral? I've been gentle and modest since young, gentle and kind since young. Lan Chang'e scolded him in his heart. You're a pile of dog shit. But he advised, Brother Chu, I really don't know what to say. You must know that a real man. Ha ha ha. Chu Yang's face was conflicted and hesitant. Finally, it turned into determination. Okay, let's do it. Lan Chang'e clapped his hands and laughed. Brother Chu is indeed a hero. I didn't misjudge you. Only a big dish like Brother Chu can achieve great things. Chu Yang laughed heartily, but his heart was heavy. This plan could not be said to be not ingenious, and could not be said to be not sinister. However, Chu Yang could see a lot of things from this. So, he became even more vigilant. Lan Chang'e did not do this to cause chaos in the heavenly layer and change the situation, but to cause the Yi clan to fall into a quagmire here. With the elders Feng and you hindering them, the Yi clan would not be able to do anything in this Tianji city. How would they be able to do anything else? In this way, the matter of the divine clan elder would become the Long clan's? But even if the Yi clan backed out of this matter, what confidence did the Long clan have to succeed? Moreover, the Ling clan was now involved. There must be other reasons for this. But no matter what, a mere elder of the Long clan dared to plot against the elders Feng and Yu. This matter was worthy of Chu Yang's vigilance. At this moment he thought of two people. Diwu Qingru once said, Don't rely on your martial power. As long as you have a bright future, you can change the world. Mo Tianji once said, Ordinary people with intelligence can control the supreme martial artist. But if the supreme martial artist has no intelligence, ordinary people can also plot against him to death. Lan Chang'e was doing this now. Naturally, Lan Chang'e's intelligence was far inferior to Diwu Qingru and Mo Tianji. However, it was precisely because he was far inferior that he was able to think of such a scheme. Even the enormous Yi clan and the powerful elders Feng and Yu were trapped. And this vicious plan against Wu Qianqian was obviously to destroy her. Destroy the elder Feng and Yu, who had a bright future, to prepare for the future of the big clan. Chu Yang dared to bet that a simple-minded person would have been persuaded if he wasn't the one sitting here at this moment. Leaving a name in history. Shocking the world. Beautiful. Supreme martial artist. The Long clan as one of the big clans. All of this was too tempting. But Chu Yang dared to say, if it was done, the first part of the first part would be the first part. Perhaps the first half of the plan would go according to plan. However, the person who would detoxify Wu Qianqian would definitely not be this person but Lan Chang'e. And the person who carried out this plan, other than being silenced, was blasted into smithereens by the Moon Breeze couple in their fury. However, the main culprit Lan Chang'e had his ways to stay out of the matter. And the one in the end Yu. So Brother Chu agrees? Lan Chang'e asked excitedly. Yes. Chu Yang gritted his teeth, stared and slapped his thigh. Haha. Then I shall congratulate Brother Chu and Wu Xian in advance. Lan Chang'e was envious. Brother Chu's luck with women, I am really envious. Chu Yang was so pleased with himself that he laughed out loud. It was as if the beauty was already in his arms. But after laughing for a while he frowned and said, That's not right. That's not right, it's not enough. Lan Chang'e was stunned and asked, Brother Chu, what's not enough? Chu Yang frowned and said, Brother Lan, you see, from the beginning to the end, I have only found a wife. She has some reputation, but the real benefits, there is nothing at all. Lan Chang'e blinked his eyes in confusion. Brother Chu, you mean? Chu Yang sighed and said, Even if Wu Xian and I get married and she becomes my wife, we still have to live for a while, right? But reputation can't make a living after all. Lan Chang'e was really stunned. Damn you. You are really greedy. I have promised you so many benefits, and you still want to raise conditions? Brother Chu, what do you mean? Lan Chang'e pinched his nose and asked unhappily. Brother Lan, you also know that I am a pharmacist. What I am most interested in are elixirs. Especially heavenly treasures. When I see them, I can't move my legs, Chu Yang said. Lan Chang'e blinked and said, Ah. Chu Yang sighed and said, I don't need too many of these. Every 10,000 years old and above. I just need 8 or 10 of them. I only need 10 of them. After all, I still have to participate in the medicine banquet, right? Lan Chang'e said painfully. So many. If Brother Lan thinks that it's too much, then forget it, Chu Yang said considerately. It's not a lot. The Lan clan will fork out these treasures for Brother Chu. Lan Chang'e gritted his teeth. Thank you so much. Chu Yang held Lan Chang'e's hand excitedly and shook it continuously. Also, I am extremely interested in some rare mineral resources. Chu Yang counted his fingers and said, for example, star iron, skywood, nightmare silver, sky dream gold, red cloud steel, star stone, tears of the purple sun. I want to get them even in my dreams. I don't ask for too much of each type. A few £100 will do. Brother Lan, these things are priceless. They are the real treasures. Lan Chang'e opened his mouth and said, If Brother Lan has any difficulties, just pretend that I didn't say anything. I will try my best for our matters. Chu Yang put on a straight face. But anyone could tell what he really meant. If you don't satisfy my conditions, then there is nothing to talk about. Anyway, you need me now. Lan Chang'e really wanted to grind his teeth. His face was pained, but he still pretended to be forthright and said, no problem. Even if I can't get so much, I will try my best to get it for Brother Chu. Brother Lan, you are really righteous. To be able to make a friend like you in my life, it is really not a waste. Chu Yang looked at him touched. I fucking met you, and had 8 generations of bad luck. Lan Chang'e scolded in his heart. Once the matter is over and I have achieved my goal, I will spit out whatever you have taken from me. How could I let a vampire-like bastard like you off so easily? But the amount of purple crystals used for daily cultivation can't be little. Chu Yang sighed and said, what should I do? Actually, I only need 100 or 200,000 purple crystals, and that will be enough for me. Even if you give me, I will have enough. Lan Chang'e almost vomited blood. He gritted his teeth and said in a low voice, Brother Chu, don't worry. Leave it to me. Brother Lan is really forthright. Chu Yang was so touched that he almost cried. In the future, when Wuxia and I become husband and wife, I will definitely be grateful to Brother Lan for recognizing my worth and helping me fulfill my wish. You are so generous and generous. Lan Chang'e forced a smile and said, Brother Chu is really, you are too polite. Chu Yang laughed and said, truth, truth. Suddenly, he frowned again and seemed to be very worried. Lan Chang'e was most afraid of his frowning now. He was suddenly on tenterhooks and asked, Brother Chu, what else do you lack? Nothing, nothing. Chu Yang frowned and rubbed his hands embarrassedly. I am really embarrassed to say. Brother Chu, feel free to say it. Lan Chang'e took a deep breath and gently exhaled. He was afraid that he would lose control and lose his temper and slap this partner into minced meat. That would be very bad. Then I will be frank. So he immediately said, you see, Brother Lan, you have a big family and a big business. If you succeed in this matter once, I'll say the ugly words first. If you don't admit it when the time comes, who should I cry to if you don't admit it? Not admitting it was a foregone conclusion. Lan Chang'e scolded fiercely in his heart and said, Brother Chu wants. I want to get half of it first. After the matter is done, I will get the other half. Chu Yang said unquestionably, get half of it first. You really dare to say that? Lan Chang'e suddenly jumped up. Brother Lan, you are wrong. Chu Yang said, when doing business, there is a deposit. Moreover, this is a matter of life and death. Half is already very little. How can scheming against a supreme martial artist be so easy to scheme against? Brother Lan, you have been hiding behind the scenes from the beginning, and there is no danger at all. But I'm the one charging at the front. If I make a mistake, I'll definitely lose my life. To put it bluntly, I am using my own life to fight for a future. Chu Yang's face gradually turned cold. No discussion. Not even my father. If this condition is not met, our previous discussion will end here. Lan Chang'e's face was full of anger. In such a hurry, where can I find so many things for you? You are purely making things difficult for me. Chu Yang crossed his legs and said, that is your problem, Brother Lan. Lan Chang'e looked at him angrily. Suddenly, His eyes slowly revealed a fierce look. Chu Yang said calmly, "Brother Lan, when you invited me today, you did not hide your whereabouts. Many people know that I was invited by you. And tomorrow, I will continue to treat Wuxian's injuries. If I go missing, what will Supreme Martial Artist Feng and you think? Unless the Long clan does not want her disciple to recover fully?" Lan Chang'e was stunned. This was indeed a possibility. However, how could the Long clan afford to offend Supreme Martial Artists Feng and you now? Even if there was a little doubt, it would affect the big plan. If we can't come to an agreement, I will not know what to say when I see Wuxian tomorrow, Chu Yang said dejectedly. I thought I had a chance to become rich and famous. Sigh, I did not expect to rejoice for nothing. My biggest weakness is that I am greedy for money and lust. Lan Chang'e reached out a hand and stopped him. He smiled gently and kindly. Brother Chu, what are you saying? You and I are good brothers. How can I not fulfill such a small request? Brother Chu, don't worry. When we leave this place, you can just follow me to get it. Asking everyone for subscriptions. Many people have left these few days. Everyone knows the specific reason, so I will not say it. Sigh, not only did the subscriptions not increase, they are even less than last month. Chapter 1000. Chu Yang was overjoyed. Really? Lan Chang'e's heart was bleeding. He said, I, Lan Chang'e, always keep my promises. That's great. Chu Yang shook his hand. You treat me as a country knight. I will repay you wholeheartedly. Brother Lan, don't worry. I am just one person. I will not be able to escape from the Long clan. So, haha, our cooperation will definitely work. How would I dare to be crafty? Lan Chang'e smiled cruelly. It's good that you know. However, Brother Lan has to promise that after the deal is done, you will not burn the bridge after crossing the river or kill me to silence me, Chu Yang said solemnly. Of course. Lan Chang'e said solemnly. I swear to the heavens that if I do such a thing, I will die a horrible death. Chu Yang was touched. Brother Lan, you don't have to swear so heavily. Little brother is really confused. I believe you. Lan Chang'e laughed. When can we start? Lan Chang'e asked. When the things I want are here, I can start immediately. Chu Yang promised seriously. Good. Lan Chang'e praised. Brother Chu is indeed straightforward. Let's go. I will bring you to get the things. However, some of the things may not be enough. I need to send people to collect them. Brother Chu, please don't be offended. How can I be offended? I have all the time in the world, I can wait. Chu Yang laughed heartily. Lan Chang'e was depressed. I said this in hopes that you would say, it's okay to have less. I did not expect this bastard to be so muddle-headed that he could wait. You are an idle person, of course you can wait. But you can't wait forever. The two of them walked out of the tea house affectionately and went straight to the Long clan's residence. After walking for a while and turning two corners, they met a group of people. The two of them looked and were stunned. Enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road. The people who came were Yi Shifeng and his subordinates. They were about to go out for a meal. Upon seeing Chu Yang and Lan Chang'e being so intimate, Yi Shifeng's eyes instantly revealed a trace of viciousness, which was immediately concealed. He laughed heartily and welcomed them. So it's Brother Lan and Brother Chu. Why, did the two of you go to have a meal? That's really early. Chu Yang replied honestly. No, I just drank a cup of tea. Yi Shifeng said affectionately. Lan Chang'e, you are too stingy. You only invited Brother Chu out for a cup of tea. Come, Brother Chu. If you don't mind, I will treat you to a drink. How could Lan Chang'e let Chu Yang and Yi Shifeng go? He stepped forward and stopped him with a faint smile on his face. Brother Yi, Brother Chu and I still have some matters to attend to. If Brother Yi wants to treat us to a meal, after we finish our business, Brother Yi can choose a place, and I will go with Brother Chu. Yi Shifeng glared at Lan Chang'e and said, If that's the case, I shall not disturb Brother Chu and Brother Lan. Brother Chu, don't forget that this little brother still owes you a meal. Ha ha ha, you and I are brothers. The future is long. Another day, I will definitely drink with Brother Chu until we are drunk. When the time comes, Brother Chu, please don't refuse. Chu Yang said straightforwardly. What are you talking about? Since Brother Yi is treating, I'm more than happy to oblige. Yi Shifeng laughed heartily, exchanged a few pleasantries, and left with his men. This person looks forthright on the surface, but he is actually a smiling tiger, very sinister. Lan Chang'e said in a timely manner. Brother Chu, when interacting with him, no matter what happens, you have to be careful. Yes, Chu Yang sighed. In this world, there are too few people like Brother Lan who values friendship, loyalty, and kindness. The two of them laughed heartily and chatted as they walked away. Behind them, Yi Shifeng, who had just turned the corner, turned his head and looked at the direction that Chu Yang and Lan Chang'e were walking towards. He asked doubtfully, "What are the two of them doing together?" He felt an inexplicable sense of danger. Could it be that Lan Chang'e wanted to deal with him? He thought about how he had offended Lan Chang'e just now, and the two of them had a conflict of interest. Yi Shifeng's heart skipped a beat. Second young master, is there any problem? An old man beside him asked with a serious expression. The problem? I'm afraid it's not a small problem. Yi Shifeng sighed and said, Follow me, I'll tell you in detail. If there's really no other way, we can only eliminate the disaster as soon as possible. Even if we have to offend Han Xiaoran, we can't care about it anymore. Everyone sighed. Han Xiaoran's cultivation was not very high. Moreover, among the law enforcement masters, the other 8 were already at the level of a supreme martial artist. The law enforcement master was even a 5th-grade supreme martial artist. However, Han Xiaoran was still at the peak of the 2nd-grade martial saint level, and had not made any progress for many years. Such strength was not even worth mentioning in the eyes of the Yi clan, the number 1 clan. However, Han Xiaoran's identity was not just an ordinary 2nd-grade martial saint. He was the number 1 leader of the law enforcement officers in the entire southeast region. He was one of the most capable assistants of the Dharma Supreme. Touching Han Xiaoran would mean facing the revenge of the entire southeast law enforcement officers. This was only one of the reasons. More importantly, touching Han Xiaoran was equivalent to giving the Dharma Supreme a tight slap. In this world, who would dare to slap the Dharma Supreme? This was the most fatal thing. 7th Granduncle, I'll have to trouble you to make a trip to the Long clan's residence to investigate what kind of collusion and conspiracy Chu Yang has with the Long clan. If the situation is urgent. Yi Shifeng's eyes flashed with determination. 7th Granduncle, please consider the overall situation of the Yi clan. The meaning of this sentence was tantamount to saying, if the situation is urgent, 7th Granduncle, you'd rather sacrifice yourself to kill Chu Yang. A black-robed elder with a cold face replied, Don't worry. The black-robed figure rose and chased after Lan Chang'e and Chu Yang. In an instant, they disappeared without a trace. Is there a need to do this? It's just a small Chu Yang. Even if he's a pharmacist, what can he do? Another person asked, puzzled. You don't know. Yi Shifeng sighed. Wuxia is injured. And the people who injured Wuxia are actually Yi Kong and Yi Yin. Wuxia doesn't know about this, but Chu Yang knows. Yi Shifeng said solemnly. Everyone took in a breath of cold air. So, Chu Yang's words may bring us big trouble. But we're at a critical juncture now. We can't afford to have any small trouble. Yi Shifeng let out a long breath and said, Otherwise I'd rather offend Han Xiaoran. If there's no other way, I can only kill Han Xiaoran, to prevent future troubles. Chu Yang followed Lan Chang'e to the temporary residence of the Long clan. He was arranged to be served tea in the living room, while Lan Chang'e hurried in. Not long after, a sinister-looking elder followed Lan Chang'e out and sized Chu Yang up. Chu Yang calmly looked back at him, but there was a hint of greed and desire in his gaze. The elder's gaze was extremely sharp, as if he wanted to cut Chu Yang's body open to see what he was thinking. After a long while, the elder snorted and left without saying a word. Before he left, he threw a ring into Lan Chang'e's hand, and then disappeared into thin air. Then, a sarcastic voice came from outside. 7th Brother Yi, what are you doing here? Then, the sound of clothes fluttering could be heard. That voice said, You want to leave after coming here? Don't you want to have a cup of tea? Then he went far away, obviously chasing after Chu Yang. Lan Chang'e laughed and sat down in front of Chu Yang. Then he took out items from the ring. One by one, Heavenly treasures were taken out and placed in front of Chu Yang. Chu Yang was overjoyed and his eyes lit up. Wow, this is Heavenly Star Purple Ganoderma 5 stalks. Wow, this is Earth Dragon Grass. Wow, this is Ice Snow Single Head Garlic. Wow, so many. As he said, he quickly waved his hand and kept them all. Lan Changa looked at him with disdain. His heart was filled with disdain. A country bumpkin who had never seen anything good. Sitting together with him was really an insult to his status. Next was the exotic mineral resources. Brother Chu, please forgive us. We do not have Heavenly Star Wood and Purple Sun Tears. I believe that there are not many of those in the entire heavens. So, I will add some other items as compensation for Brother Chu. How about that? Lan Changa asked. No problem. I also did not expect you to have them. Haha. Chu Yang said without reservation. You can use other items as compensation. I don't mind. Can you mind? Even if it is other items, how many times can you see them in your lifetime? Lan Changa was frustrated. One by one, the items were taken out and kept by Chu Yang at an even faster speed. Finally, there was a big pile of purple crystals. According to Chu Yang's estimation, there were at least 50,000 purple crystals. It seemed that the Long clan had really paid a heavy price this time. What kind of use did the Divine Clan Elder have to the Long clan? They were actually willing to spend so much. But since it was so important, why did they give it to the Zhuge clan? This was something that Chu Yang could not understand. Brother Chu, please count them. Don't make any mistakes. Lan Changa said. No need. Even if I don't believe in the entire heavenly layer, I still believe in Brother Lan. Chu Yang happily put away the purple crystals and said with a smile. Lan Changa's mouth twitched again. Damn, you are so generous. If he had known earlier, he would have shortened the numbers so that he could fill his own pockets. So, when is Brother Chu going to take action? Lan Changa asked. The sooner the better. As long as Brother Lan gives me the medicine, I will make the arrangements anytime. Chu Yang said generously. Good. Lan Changa was shocked and clapped his hands. Then he smiled knowingly and said, Looks like Brother Chu can't wait for Wuxian. Chu Yang revealed you know what a man's smile meant. Ha. When Chu Yang walked out of the Lan clan's courtyard, he really lived up to the name of having 2 sleeves of gold. He was rich and it was a windfall. Feeling that there was a huge pile of purple crystals in the tribulation space, Chu Yang sighed and said, A man can't be rich without windfall, and a horse can't be fat without feeding at night. This sentence was too fucking reasonable. Therefore, Chu Yang decided to do his best to carry out Lan Changa's plan to the end. Although the ending would definitely not be what Lan Changa had in mind, Chu Yang would definitely do it according to his own wishes. He believed that by then, he would be able to give Lan Changa and the Long clan a big surprise. Chapter 1001. Chu Yang arrived at the Orchard Palace easily. The moment he entered, he felt that something was wrong. It was too quiet. He thought that Zi Xieching had brought Chu Luer out to play again. When he opened the door, he saw that Chu Luer was soaked in a big wooden basin. Zi Xieching was standing outside the basin, pressing one hand on Chu Luer's head and urging something with all her might. What's going on? Chu Yang scratched his head. Big brother, don't look. Chu Luer was half naked in the wooden basin. When she saw Chu Yang enter, she immediately became shy. Chu Yang pursed his lips and said, What a sensitive little girl. You even told me not to look. Even if I look, what can I see? 2 rows of ribs. It was true. Due to her illness all year round and her young age, Chu Luer's female body had not started to develop. There were no signs at all. No wonder Chu Yang did not care. Otherwise, Chu Yang would have escaped long ago without Chu Luer's reminder. Besides, Zi Xieching would not have let him in. Big brother, you're so bad. Chu Luer felt extremely wronged. I haven't grown up yet. Yes, when you grow up, I really can't look anymore. Chu Yang nodded and said seriously. Ha. Even though Zi Xieching had an outstanding composure, she was still amused by these few words. She laughed and stopped. Chu Luer jumped out and wrapped herself in the bedsheet. She kept muttering unhappily, Bad brother. Bad person. Bad brother. Chu Yang and Zi Xieching swayed back and forth. After laughing for a while, Chu Yang asked, It's Luer's body constitution. I unblocked her meridians in advance and changed her body constitution. Now, as long as Luer's ulcer is removed, she will immediately have an innate body, Zi Xiecheng said casually. This is nothing. I like Luer a lot. Chu Yang took a deep breath. Nothing. You said it so casually. But I almost fainted from shock. A person, especially a girl with a congenital disease, was able to completely change her body's natural endowments and directly upgrade her to the innate body that martial artists dreamed of. This was akin to being reborn and having a meteoric rise. It must be known that some martial artists might not be able to reach the Xiantian level even after working hard for a lifetime. Not to mention that their entire body, including their meridians and blood vessels, were Xiantian physiques. And an innate physique that had never cultivated before was even more heaven-defying to the extreme. This was equivalent to a piece of pure gold and unpolished jade. Once they started cultivating, they would start from the Xiantian realm. Chu Lu only felt that her body had become much more relaxed. She didn't know how much benefit she had gained, but Chu Yang was well aware. I won't say any words of thanks. Chu Yang gazed deeply at Zi Xiecheng and said slowly, how could such a huge favor be expressed with just the word thank you? Zi Xiecheng smiled faintly and said, there's nothing to thank me for. It's just a small matter. Chu Yang chuckled. Zi Xiecheng said that it was a piece of cake. But how could he be so naive to believe her? Just by looking at the slight perspiration on Zi Xiecheng's forehead, he knew that Zi Xiecheng definitely didn't have it easy. To a powerful person like Zi Xiecheng, it might not be too difficult to transform a newborn baby into an Xiantian physique. But to transform a 12-year-old girl who had never cultivated before and who had a congenital abscess into an Xiantian physique was almost an impossible task. Oh yes, I went out this morning and got quite a lot of elixirs and 70,000 purple crystals. It should be enough for us to squander for a while. Chu Yang suggested. Why don't we have another round of battle? Perhaps, the only way he could repay her was to let her absorb enough energy from the Tao state as soon as possible, so that she could complete her final Leduo. Zi Xiecheng's eyes flashed, and she said tiredly, I'm a little tired today. Let's do it another day. Then she fell silent. Chu Yang was startled. He looked deeply at her and smiled. Let's do it another day then. Then, both of them fell silent at the same time. After a long while, they walked out at the same time and sat down under the flower rack. During this period of time, the big clans all have their own plans. When the time comes, I may need your help, Chu Yang said softly. This sentence was a little awkward. Even if he didn't say it, Zi Xiecheng would definitely help him when the time came. No problem. Zi Xiecheng leaned back on the chair and revealed a hint of laziness. This laziness on Zi Xiecheng was really rare. Chu Yang couldn't help but stare blankly. Actually, if you just want to unify the heavens, I think I can help. Zi Xiecheng looked at him seriously. With a wave of her hand, a huge divine consciousness shrouded the entire orchard palace. Then, she looked at him and said, how about letting me destroy the big clans before I leave? I'll help you sweep the heavens, how about that? Zi Xiecheng's voice was relaxed, as if she was talking about a trivial matter. Destroy the big clans completely? Help me sweep the heavens. Chu Yang was shocked. He stared at her with his mouth agape. Yes, if you're willing, I'll completely destroy the big clans before I leave this heavens. I'm not sure about other things, but I can promise you one thing. If you're willing, I can do it. After I leave, there won't be anyone with the surname of a big clan in this world anymore. Zi Xiecheng's slender fingers knocked on the stone table in front of her lightly. If you're worried about the law enforcement officers, I'll destroy the law enforcement officers as well. Chu Yang suddenly felt dizzy. This woman's words were too casual. For example, if you're not willing to eat this plate of mung bean sprouts, how about I eat it for you? For a moment, Chu Yang suddenly felt that his mouth was dry. He grabbed the teapot and drank a few cups of tea. I see that with your weak strength, it's too difficult to deal with such a huge enemy. Your life is in danger at any time, anywhere. Zi Xiecheng said softly. Her eyes no longer looked at Chu Yang, but focused on her slender fingers. By doing this, I'll take it as and take it as a compensation for helping me collect the Tao state energy. Chu Yang smiled bitterly. No. Chu Yang said in a deep but clear voice. No. Zi Xiecheng looked up at him in surprise. Chu Yang took a deep breath. I understand what you mean, but I also have a few things to say. Firstly, you don't owe me. If I have to say that I owe you, it's me who owes you. We each take what we need, and it's equivalent to cooperation. So, I don't want to hear anything about repayment. I can't repay you, but you don't need to repay me in any way. Chu Yang said seriously. Zi Xiecheng listened to him seriously, and nodded her head slowly. Secondly, I'm a man. This is my business and I want to do it myself. Chu Yang said seriously. I can borrow your strength in some of my plans, but I'll never use your hands to achieve my ultimate goal. A proud man? Zi Xiecheng laughed. Chu Yang laughed too. Thirdly, these enemies in front of me are my opponents. They're my life experiences. Chu Yang said seriously. Or rather, they're my training. Only by rushing out from here and walking out can I rush up step by step and rush out. Speaking till here, he paused and looked at Zi Xiecheng. Do you understand what I mean? Zi Xiecheng nodded. I understand very well. So, I need such danger to prick me, to train me, to motivate me to let me fight. Even if because of this this life, after all, is lived to the fullest. Chu Yang said with great care. I understand now. Your goal isn't this heaven. Zi Xiecheng smiled lightly. If you had agreed to my previous suggestion, I'd definitely do it. But I'm also a little dissatisfied. Now your answer has comforted me, she said with some disappointment and some relief. So what you said before was true? Of course it's true. Chu Yang raised his eyebrows and said. The person who folds the heaven is also a person. You Zi Xiecheng are also a person. I Chu Yang am also a person. As Chu Yang said this, both of them became silent. There were too many implications behind Chu Yang's words. But as long as he said this, both of them had a tacit understanding and didn't need to say more. Relying on the heavens, the earth, and the ancestors wasn't about ability. Fighting for one's own world with bare hands was glory. Glory was only the goal. The process was the enjoyment. After a long time, Zi Xiecheng smiled and said, You're right. I also think that with your bones, Chu Yang, you're one of the toughest in the world. Chu Yang laughed. I, Chu Yang, may not have any other advantages, but I'm proud. In my previous and current lives, I've never lowered my head or bent my back to anyone or anything. Previous and current lives? Zi Xiecheng smiled playfully. These words are a little interesting. Chu Yang smiled lightly. So, what you said about beating me up in the future is also true. Zi Xiecheng squinted and looked at him playfully. If I can beat you, I'll beat you up. Chu Yang didn't evade and didn't hide his intentions. Good. Zi Xiecheng smiled. I'll wait for you to beat me up. Don't cry when the time comes. Chu Yang blinked. Both of them laughed together. In this world, there's endless excitement and also endless loneliness. Zi Xiecheng smiled. Once you enter and walk on this road, you'll be walking alone. Once you're injured, you'll be doomed eternally. Heaven's will is unpredictable and unpredictable. The road ahead may be blocked at any time. If you can't defeat the enemy, you'll only be lonely for life. Sometimes you can't even find someone to talk to. You'll have to think carefully. Chu Yang was silent. Suddenly he smiled. When you said this, I actually had a feeling that you've been following me all the way from the lower three heavens. Because what you just said almost includes the names of all my brothers. Chapter 1002. Traveling alone. I have a brother called Gu Duxing. Once he is injured, he will be doomed eternally. Therefore he must not be injured. Therefore I have a brother called Dong Wushang. Heaven's will is hard to predict. I have a brother called Mo Tianji. The wind and clouds are strange. I have a brother called Ao Shiyun. His road ahead may be blocked at any time. Therefore, I have a brother called Rui Butong. If he cannot defeat the enemy, he will be lonely for life. Haha, I have two other brothers. One is called Luo Kadi, and the other is called GMO. Sometimes, I can't even find someone to talk to. Chu Yang smiled warmly. My junior brother's name is Tan Tan. And as long as we get through all of this, we will be glorious, and the sun will rise from the east. Chu Yang smiled. My other brother is called Xiedanqiong, and I, Chu Yang, will go out of the sun. That is, the sun will rise from the east. Chu Yang smiled faintly. His eyes revealed deep longing. He looked at Zi Xieching. Don't you think this is a coincidence? Zi Xieching couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. Then she laughed and said, It is indeed a coincidence. After pondering for a while, she said, These are all your most cunning brothers? Yes, they are all my good brothers. Chu Yang's tone was very serious. If one day, you can surpass the heavens, surpass the heavens. Zi Xieching said twice but stopped. Chu Yang was also a little silent. He said, You have said so much. Is your Tao state energy almost enough? You are about to leave. Zi Xieching was silent for a long time. Then she said softly, I am still lacking a very, very small part. I should be able to make up for it at any time. Chu Yang said worriedly, But if you are somewhere else and don't have the Tao state energy, what will you do? Zi Xieching smiled and looked at Chu Yang warmly. She said, Chu Yang, where does the Tao state energy come from? Chu Yang was stunned. Where does it come from? He really didn't think about this question. The Tao state energy is, in fact, the Tao void energy. Only when a person's spirit is highly concentrated and is one with heaven and earth, then he can use his spirit realm to draw down the Tao void energy and turn it into his own. The top of each of these continents is like a giant pot lid, blocking out the great Tao void. Because once it's opened, the people on the ground will also float up, and they won't be able to survive at all. So long as I break through this barrier, I'll be in the boundless void of the grand Tao. Anytime, anywhere, including a single breath, there is inexhaustible power of the great Tao of the void. Zi Xieching looked at Chu Yang solemnly. Chu Yang, you have to remember that only when a person has reached that stage can he be barely called a master. This is the reason why I'm not interested in this world. For example, if you were to watch a group of ants fight every day, you would find it boring. A true expert. The power of the void of the great Tao. Chu Yang's eyes revealed a trace of fascination. Chu Yang, if I leave. Zi Xieching's eyes suddenly flickered. You must tell me when you leave, Chu Yang said heavily. I'll send you off. Zi Xieching's throat moved twice, as if she wanted to say something, but she didn't say it in the end. She just said, Okay. Actually, I've been abused by you for such a long time, and I've been beaten up by you every day. But it has indeed brought me endless benefits. Although I scold you sometimes, but if you really leave, I think my heart will also be a little. Chu Yang smiled a little disappointed. A little what? Zi Xieching asked. A little relieved, ha ha ha. Chu Yang's mind changed, but he still swallowed back the words that he was about to say, and changed to another sentence. Zi Xieching bit her lips, glanced at him, and then a smile appeared on her face. She said, Looks like I'll have to train you well during this period of time. The two looked at each other and smiled. After a long time, Zi Xieching stood up and said, I'll go lie down for a while. Without waiting for Chu Yang's reply, she turned and left. Her white clothes flashed and she disappeared. But Chu Yang clearly felt that Zi Xieching seemed to be in a hurry, as if she was hiding from something. He couldn't help but sigh, and was in a daze. Actually, as a man, maybe I'm qualified. But as a woman, a man like me, Chu Yang murmured and smiled bitterly. The flowers and trees above his head swayed with the wind, and slowly drifted down, landing on his head, his arms, his black robe. In these few days, Tianji City became more and more lively. The other big clans came one after another, and some scattered small clans also came one after another. Even the pharmacists of the whole continent, those who were confident in their abilities, came from all directions. What surprised everyone the most was that the Li clan, which everyone thought would definitely not participate in the medicine banquet this time, actually sent people this time. And it was an 8th grade supreme martial artist leading the team, and more than 100 people came in a mighty manner. When they saw people from other clans, they also greeted them calmly, as if nothing had happened. The last to arrive was the Chun clan, which had already lost a batch of people. When the people from the Chun clan arrived, it could be seen that everyone's face was a little ugly. Then, whether it was the Yi clan, the Ling clan, the Long clan or the Zhuge clan, they all obviously felt the undercurrent surging. It seemed that the Shi clan was also intentionally or unintentionally getting closer to the matter of their own clan's elders. The Xiao clan also had such plans. And another big clan, the Li clan, actually also started to get restless. This phenomenon made the supreme martial artists leading the teams from the big clans very confused. Why did such a secret matter suddenly become a common thing? Everyone knew about it. What was going on? Where did these people get their information from? Especially the Zhuge clan, who had originally planned to only send a few supreme martial artists to maintain the situation. But now they had no choice but to mobilize the whole family. The clan leader of the Zhuge clan, Zhuge Shanyan, was so worried that his hair almost turned white. In the current situation, all parties were restraining each other. And with the medicine banquet, nothing major would happen. But this didn't mean that these few clans didn't make any moves. Once one of them felt that the time was ripe and exploded, it would definitely affect the whole situation. The big clans would be plunged into unprecedented chaos. With so many supreme martial artists exploding at the same time, Tianji City would probably fly into the sky on the spot. Moreover, the moon breeze supremacy was hiding here. The Dharma Supreme would also rush over. Thinking of these things, Zhuge Shanyan's head swelled, and his heart trembled. It had been 10,000 years. Things like the medicine banquet had been held 8 times. Why did it have to be the Zhuge clan's turn this time, when it was their turn? What made the head of the Zhuge clan the most speechless was that the elder master who had been in seclusion all this while suddenly had a sudden impulse to observe the night sky, and made a prophecy. A great calamity would befall the Zhuge clan. It concerned the fate of the entire clan, so they had to prepare in advance. When he received this news, Zhuge Shanyan was speechless and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He wanted to be angry but he couldn't. Why didn't they do it earlier? Now that things had already reached this stage, how could they prepare in advance? Wasn't this a classic example of giving advice after the fact? Of course, the Xiao clan was also very depressed, because they had just entered Tianji City, when they bumped into the Yi clan. There was a moment of hostility on the spot. After a round of bickering, they finally separated, and went their own ways. On the night that the Xiao clan arrived at Tianji City, they had a fierce conflict with the Yi clan. The exact reason was unknown, but after one night, both parties had lost 3 people each. There were also a few others who had injuries on them. During this period of time, the Li clan had been here for 3 days, and they had already fought. Every time, they would fight for no reason. Although the Li clan knew that the other clans were deliberately provoking them, they could only bear with it. In any case, Tianji City was like a pot of porridge that was placed over a raging fire. The fire was getting stronger and stronger, and the porridge was getting softer and softer. Furthermore, there were 2 invisible hands that were holding 2 huge wooden sticks and stirring the pot of soggy porridge with all their might. The more they stirred, the mushier it became. The more they stirred, the stronger the smell of gunpowder. But they still continued to stir. There is a saying that goes, "A storm is about to come." But in the eyes of the current head of the Zhuge clan, Zhuge Shanyan, how was this a storm? It was clearly before the world exploded. Once it exploded, the Zhuge clan would definitely be finished, even if no one knew what would happen to them. Now the situation was completely out of control. It was like a plane that had been accelerated to full speed and suddenly lost control. It was rushing toward the mountains in the distance at lightning speed. It was no wonder that the Zhuge clan, which had always been famous for its control, had actually started to burn incense and worship in the secret chamber. Pray to the heavens to let the Zhuge clan survive this ordeal. Now, the thing that Zhuge Shanyan hoped for the most was the Dharma Supreme's early arrival. As the cold winter rain fell, the people from the Medicine Valley finally arrived at Tianji City, after traveling thousands of miles. The chaos in Tianji City also calmed down a little, because of the arrival of the people from the Medicine Valley. The winter rain was continuous, and it actually rained for 3 days. On the 3rd day, a group of horses appeared in the distance. Before they appeared on the horizon, a heavy pressure had already enveloped the sky above Tianji City. That was a kind of extreme dignity. Then, after a long time, a group of people on horses appeared on the horizon. Black horses, black clothes, black hair, black shoes, and a black scabbard. There were not many people, and they seemed to be dressed exactly the same as the Yi clan. But the feeling that they gave off was completely different. The Yi clan was noble and imposing, but this group of people was full of dignity that no one dared to offend. Moreover, there was a kind of dignity and dominance that looked down on all living things, as if they were in the palm of their hands. In front of these people, everyone could not help but feel guilty, as if they had suddenly become criminals. Not only did they become criminals, but they were also standing in the courtroom, facing the high and mighty judge. Even the most ordinary residents of Tianji City could feel this kind of power. Everyone knew the person that everyone had been waiting for. The Dharma Supreme. At present, the heaven was the most supreme existence. It was finally here. Chapter 1003. The people of the big clans were clearly divided into groups at the city gate, welcoming the arrival of the Dharma Supreme. The Yi clan was black like ink, like the night sky. At the very front, there was a ball of darkness, and the shadows were wrapped around a figure standing there. The people of the Xiao clan were dressed in green. At the front, there was also a person wrapped in green fog. The people of the Long clan were dressed in green, but gave off a very simple and elegant feeling, standing quietly. At the front of the group, there was a figure standing upright, without any concealment. The people of the Ling clan were dressed in white like snow. The person at the front, even his hair and beard were snow white, standing tall and straight. Once one saw the people of the Ling clan, it was as if they could feel the bone-chilling cold wind on the snowy plains. The people of the Shi clan were dressed in light green, really like a pair of big green stones on the Daqing Mountains. The people of the Zhuge clan were dressed in linen, all of them with the demeanor of a celestial being. The people of the Li clan were dressed in purple. The purple aura was dazzling, like the purple aura coming from the east. The people of the Chen clan were dressed in yellow, shining brightly, actually graceful and luxurious. The people of the Li clan were dressed in blue. In front of each group, there was a person standing. This person was the candidate chosen to nourish the heavens in this medicine banquet organized by the big clans, the Medicine Valley and the law enforcement officers. The lowest was a 7th-grade supreme martial artist. This law enforcement master formed a group and waited quietly. At this moment, outside Tianji City, it was a true gathering of heroes and experts. The black group from afar slowly approached. With every step they took, it seemed that the solemn and majestic aura became stronger. On the city gate tower of Tianji City, 2 figures in white stood in the wind. They were Yu Lingxue and Feng Yuro. How majestic! Feng Yuro pursed her lips slightly. I have always hated this kind of style. Yu Lingxue sighed deeply. Law enforcement officers are not individuals who can abuse their power, their lives. Should we show him who's boss now? Feng Yuro tilted her head and looked at her husband. Your Dao realm isn't stable yet, so don't cause too much trouble. Yu Lingxue said indifferently. Today us husband and wife are standing here to let him know that we are here. This is already the most benevolent thing we can do. In the future, let's rely on our own methods. The Tribulation Sword Master hasn't appeared yet. Why hasn't he appeared yet? Feng Yuro frowned. If it's us, we don't have a proper reason. Yu Lingxue didn't say anything. After a long while he said, although the Tribulation Sword Master hasn't been exposed, he must have appeared. Moreover, it is very likely to be in this Tianji city. The husband and wife did not speak anymore. After standing for a while, Yu Lingxue let out a long howl and shouted, the medicine banquet has begun, Dharma Supreme. From today onwards, we the Feng and Yu couple have offended you. With this long howl, the wind and clouds surged. His voice was like a dragon soaring to the heavens, and a crane crying in the vast sky. The thick dark clouds in the sky were still drizzling with a drizzle of cold rain. But at this moment, a big hole suddenly opened up in the sky, and thousands of rays of sunlight poured down, illuminating the drizzle in the sky like a dream. Yu Lingxue's voice was also like thunder in spring. In the sky, from the direction of where he was standing in Tianji City, it rumbled and crushed forward. Everywhere it passed, the mountains shook and the earth shook, as if the sky was falling and the earth was splitting. In the group below, other than the leader, everyone else had a look of astonishment on their faces. From the black group far away, An invisible aura suddenly shot up to the sky. This aura shot straight up to the sky. The dark clouds that had just been opened up by a small gap actually closed up rapidly. Between the sky and the earth, the rain resumed. An elegant voice, without the slightest bit of worldly life, said with a smile, "Haha. I love this kind of drizzling weather the most. It's full of poetry. Walking in this drizzling land, it's as if my soul is also receiving the cleansing of heaven and earth." Then this voice said, "Brother you haha, after entering the city, are you willing to get drunk with me?" Yu Lingxue stood on top of the city gate tower and said indifferently, "Those who walk different paths cannot work together." This voice laughed softly. A wave of laughter suddenly spread just like that. Everyone who heard this laughter suddenly felt happy and relaxed. They couldn't help but smile involuntarily. Unknowingly, the Dharma Supreme's laughter actually affected everyone. One must know that which one of the people at the city gate wasn't an earth-shattering character, just by standing out. But the Dharma Supreme's laughter easily affected them. This kind of mental strength was really rare in the world. "Brother you is still so stubborn. Forget it. After this matter is settled, you and I can sit down and have a good chat," the Dharma Supreme said with a smile. Yu Lingxue snorted. Two white shadows shot up to the sky from the city gate tower and disappeared in a flash. In the black group, in a horse carriage, a man in black sat quietly with his legs crossed. There was a faint mocking smile at the corner of his mouth. "Open and aboveboard. Yu Lingxue, you really can't change this bad habit of yours. Being open and aboveboard is a little pedantic. If you were to hide in the dark and make things difficult for me, I would really be in trouble. But since you actually came to inform me in advance, you're courting death." The smile at the corner of the man in black's mouth widened. With a kind of heaven-shaking majesty, the Dharma Supreme's group finally arrived in front of Tianji City. They stopped quietly. Everyone bowed together. "Welcome, Lord Dharma Supreme." Two men in black stepped forward and lifted the curtains of the horse carriage. "Everyone, there's no need for formalities," a gentle voice said softly. Then a black shadow suddenly appeared. There were many 8th grade supreme martial artists present, but they actually didn't notice how this black shadow appeared. Once it appeared, it was standing in front of everyone. Everyone was shocked. When they looked up, they only felt a sense of absent-mindedness, as if their lives were suddenly reversed at this moment. Back to when they were young. Back then, when they first met the Dharma Supreme, he was like now. Now he was still like back then. Dressed in a black robe, but it seemed to show endless majesty. He stood in front of the city gate with his hands behind his back. But everyone present had the illusion that the Dharma Supreme in front of them was much taller than the city gate tower of Tianji City. Although he was just standing in front of them, the feeling he gave them was obviously that he was standing in the clouds. His body was tall and straight. His face, it was really hard to tell how old this person was. It was possible to say that he was 20 years old, 30 years old, 50 years old. Even if you guessed that he was 20,000 years old, it was still possible. His long black hair was evenly parted at the middle of his head, like a waterfall. His eyes were filled with warmth. Being stared at by such a gaze was like a spring breeze blowing across the earth. However, it also gave rise to this thought. In front of this pair of eyes, all the sins in the world have nowhere to hide. The Dharma Supreme took a step forward. A gentle gust of wind lifted everyone up. "Everyone please rise. Xiaosei, you finally appeared. Ed, how are you? Lan Muxue, long time no see. Shi Jing, do you remember me? Li Xiangxi, have you recovered from your lovesickness? Haha. Ling Fengyan, back then I said that your name was really grand. Now it's really above the clouds. Qingqiu, let's get drunk and drown our sorrows. Chen Mengqi, nice to meet you. Zhuge Hutu, you're not muddle-headed at all." The Dharma Supreme called out the names of every leader of the big clans with familiarity. His voice was affectionate, as if they were old friends who had finally met at this moment. Everyone was also full of smiles, as they came forward to exchange greetings with the Dharma Supreme. Their expressions were respectful with a hint of pride, neither servile nor overbearing. It was a joyous meeting here. However, the people of the big clans present were all shocked, and shocked again. They only felt their ears rumbling. as if a series of thunderclaps were exploding beside their ears. For no reason. The names that came out from the Dharma Supreme's mouth were the elder masters of their respective clans. The true second-generation founders of their clans. Any one of these people, if they were to appear, even the entire heavens would shake. The autumn wind rustles, the unsheathed sword is colorless. Second Grandmaster of the Shao clan Shao say. The night sky is dark, the heavens is the emperor. Second Grandmaster of the Yi clan, Yi Di. 10,000 miles of mysterious ice. The heavens are cold. 1,000 mountains of sunset snow. A petal of orchid. Second Grandmaster of the Long clan, Lan Wuxia. Since ancient times, men are sometimes limited. A stubborn stone can shock the world. Second Grandmaster of the Shi clan, Shi Jing. On the ancient path of evening mist, a man is crazy. The blood sword is red to repay kindness. Second Grandmaster of the Li clan, Li Xiangxi. Standing alone on a snowy peak, blocking the gates of heaven, one sword can rule the winds and clouds. Second Grandmaster of the Li clan, Ling Fengyan. Drifting with the wind, drifting to the four seas to disperse my sorrows. Second Grandmaster of the Li clan, Qing Sorrowful. Life is like a dream since ancient times. It's too late to regret once you see the dream. Second Grandmaster of the Chun clan, Chun Mengqi. Tao is muddle-headed but not muddle-headed. If I'm muddle-headed, the heavens will be muddle-headed. Second Grandmaster of the Zhuge clan, Zhuge Hutu. Great expert. Great supreme martial artist. These were all legendary figures, their names shocking the heavens, at least 1,000 years. Now, all of them had actually appeared in this place. How could it not make one feel as if they were in a dream? In hundreds of millions of years, this medicine banquet for nourishing the heavens is indeed the grandest. The Dharma Supreme smiled with his hands behind his back, walking forward slowly. Looks like this time, there's a lot of hope and confidence. Everyone laughs softly. Only Zhuge Hutu of the Zhuge clan hesitated for a moment, then smiled bitterly and said, I still hope that it's not so grand. With so many influential figures appearing in our Zhuge clan, if each of them were to extend a hand or kick a leg, our Zhuge clan would be gone. Lord Dharma Supreme, I can't even cry for you. The Dharma Supreme laughed and shook his head. You rascal, you're actually saying witty things at this juncture. With me here, do you think I'll let your Zhuge clan be gone just like that? All the famous supreme martial artists immediately roared with laughter. This was what Zhuge Hutu wanted to hear. Beaming with delight, he said, with the Dharma Supreme's words, we can rest assured. Everyone chatted along the way and entered the city gates. Just as they were about to enter the city gates, a voice suddenly snorted and said, Wait a minute. All of you have been putting on airs for so long. My old back is aching from waiting. Let me bring my disciple in first, then all of you can enter. Chapter 1004. Just as the Dharma Supreme and the rest were about to enter the city gates, a voice suddenly snorted and said, Hold on. You guys have been putting on airs for so long. My old back is aching from waiting. Let me bring my disciple in first, then you guys can enter. This voice was filled with dissatisfaction, disdain, and even a little anger. There seemed to be a kind of thought. I'm so awesome, but I haven't put on airs yet. And you guys are already putting on airs. Are you guys better than me? That's what it meant. This sentence was earth-shattering. Everyone was instantly shocked. They all turned to look towards the direction of the voice. On the right side of the city gates, two people were walking over slowly. One of them was dressed in a green robe that had been washed until it was white. His face was wrinkled, and he exuded a very ordinary and indifferent aura. But the expression on his face was definitely not ordinary and indifferent. It was even a little displeasure, which could be seen very clearly. He looked at the Dharma Supreme with a hint of an arrogant smile on his lips. It was obvious that he was saying, I always find you an eyesore. Beside him stood a young girl dressed in red. She was as adorable as a celestial pearl, with snow-white cheeks, bright eyes, and elegant soft hair. She was already considered tall for her age, and had already started to develop. Her chest was slightly bulging, and her buttocks were slightly perky, which made her waist even slimmer. She was so delicate that it made one's heart ache. But she was also so stunning that it made one feel pity for her. She stood there like the rosy clouds in the sky that suddenly landed here. On the young girl's shoulder, a snow-white little fox, only the size of a palm, looked at everyone with its black eyes. It stretched out its two little claws, and actually pulled open a piece of candy, and threw it into its mouth with a smack. Two people were walking towards them, neither fast nor slow. One of the Chun clan's management experts was already unhappy this time. Damn it, the other clans were fine. Only our Chun clan had a batch of people wiped out, causing him to almost run for his life to rush here. When he heard this sentence, he was even more depressed. He didn't even turn his head and started scolding. Damn it, who is so daring? They must not want to live anymore. Do you know who is standing in front of you? As soon as these words came out, the early winter weather suddenly turned cold and frosty. That person slowly turned his head, and his originally lazy eyes suddenly became unfathomable. It was as if the entire universe had been sucked into his eyes. The Chun clan's second forefather, Chun Mengqi, turned pale with fright, and was about to slap him. Xiao Se, who was at the side, had already started laughing sinisterly. This saying is really true. This world lacks everything, but it doesn't lack a ***. He dares to look down on the 10 great supreme martial artists. You, a mere first-grade martial saint, actually dares to spout nonsense. The Dharma Supreme's face also darkened as he asked indifferently, which clan is this person from? Chun Mingqi's face was covered in sweat. He bowed and said, yes, I did not teach well. I seek the forgiveness of the Dharma Supreme and Senior Bu. He bowed and did not raise his head again. With his knowledge and experience, how could he not recognize the top 3 powers in the entire heavenly layer? Angering the Dharma Supreme was secondary now, because no matter what, the Dharma Supreme would still give him some face. However, Buluqing was famous for not giving face to anyone. If he really got angry, would the Chun clan's people be wiped out here again? Looking at all the people from the Chun clan, it seemed that only he could barely escape with his life. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. What kind of people had the Chun clan been raising all these years? He secretly swore that as long as nothing happened this time, he would go back and rectify the clan rules. I am already 1,000 years old. Do you think it is easy for me to lower my head, just because of this one sentence? The Dharma Supreme said indifferently, he is not scolding me. Brother Bu, what do you think? The man in green laughed coldly and said indifferently, what do I think? I think the world has really gone crazy. TSK, which clan is this person from? Get out here. With each word, Chun Mingqi broke out in a cold sweat. The green-robed man's eyes darkened. But all the high-level supreme martial artists present knew that this man was truly enraged. They couldn't help but look at Chun Mingqi with a sympathetic gaze. The Chun clan had really kicked a super big iron plate this time. And this time, even the Dharma Supreme might not be able to persuade them. At the same time, everyone felt very strange. Speaking of which, the Chun clan was really unlucky. The Chun clan actually offended 3 of the 5 great powers in the heavenly layer in just 3 months. This kind of luck was really too heaven-defying to be cured. They had offended Yu Lingxue and Feng Yuro, but they had only killed a few people. It was fine if they had to suffer in silence, but now they had offended Buluqing. Offending Buluqing, the consequences were far more serious than offending Yu Lingxue and Feng Yuro. For a moment, everyone had mixed feelings. There were those who were watching the show, those who were gloating, and those who wanted to see the world in chaos. Of course, they didn't know that this time, the Chun clan had offended not only Buluqing, but also Ning Tianya. Now the 2 of them were almost inseparable, and Buluqing had even brought his disciple out. If Ning Tianya knew about this, it could be said that his temper was very good if he didn't make a fuss at Chun Han's headquarters. The person who came was of course Buluqing. Buluqing was extremely angry. Along the way, he had brought his disciple on a scenic tour. The first few days were very pleasant, because with the help of his divine consciousness and elixirs, Mo Qingwu's cultivation didn't fall behind at all compared to when she was on the mountain. Instead it improved. But after half a month, the little girl couldn't bear it anymore. She kept urging him. She urged him to look for her brother Chu Yang. No matter how resourceful Buluqing was, where could he find that brother Chu Yang? Therefore, from the 10th day onwards, Bu Liuqing's days gradually became a little sad. And as time passed day by day, this sadness became more and more unbearable. At this time, Bu Liuqing missed Ningtianya very much. Come back quickly. Bu Liuqing wrapped his arms in Mo Qingwu's embrace countless times, and called out to Ningtianya affectionately in his heart. Dear brother, please come back quickly. Come and teach your disciple. I won't fight with you for the #1 position in the world anymore. I'll go and look for elixirs for you. But Ningtianya couldn't hear it. It was very difficult to urge his disciple to practice martial arts under such circumstances. Every time Bu Liuqing went to urge his disciple to practice martial arts, he would be met with a supercilious look. Then, he would be greeted with a hopeful question. Have you found my elder brother Chu Yang? The answer was of course no. Then, Mo Qingwu didn't say anything. She just looked at Bu Liuqing with grief. Her big eyes started to well up with tears. Being stared at by such a pair of eyes, Bu Liuqing would suddenly feel as if he had committed a great sin. In a moment his heart was filled with guilt, so he quietly retreated. And Mo Qingwu started to cultivate on her own outside. Supreme martial artist Bu sighed long and short. After 2.5 months, Bu Liuqing realized that he had actually lost a lot of weight. It wasn't easy for him to bring his little grandaunt to the outskirts of Tianji City, and he actually encountered such a huge scene. After all, the Dharma Supreme was currently the supreme ruler of the heavens. So, Bu Liuqing wanted to give him face and let them enter first. He really didn't want to get into any trouble with his disciple. If his disciple got hurt because of this, wouldn't Ningtianya come after him? So Bu Liuqing waited at the side for a while. Who knew that after waiting for a while, there was no end to this bunch of bastards? The more he waited, the more frustrated and anxious he became. Finally, he saw that this bunch of people were done exchanging pleasantries and showing off. They actually started to walk towards the city gates. This made Supreme Martial Artist Bu unable to tolerate it. There's such a big bunch of you, fuck. By the time you all enter, I'll have had my fill. He directly said this sentence, and then walked in with his disciple. In Supreme Martial Artist Bu's heart, yes, you may be the Dharma Supreme, but you're not to be trifled with either. Since I've already said so, if you don't want to fight, then obediently make way for me. Let me go in first, and everything will be fine. Otherwise, I really won't hesitate to fight with you. Anyway, you don't dare to provoke me at this critical moment. Ha! Who would have thought that after saying this, just as he swaggered into the city, Supreme Martial Artist Bu felt a little satisfied. It was the Dharma Supreme in front of him. Although he didn't think much of it, Mo Qingwu knew how important these people were. Seeing how her teacher was so arrogant, actually walking in so unscrupulously, the little girl's eyes were already filled with worship. Bu Liuqing instantly felt a little smug as he enjoyed his disciple's worshipful gaze. He could even imagine that once they entered the city gates, his precious disciple would definitely say, "Wow, teacher, you're too awesome. I'm so, hee, how great is that?" Who would have thought that at this juncture, someone would suddenly jump out and say such a sentence? This sentence was so merciless that it was even more unbearable than cursing. Bu Liuqing almost fainted on the spot. This world lacks all kinds of people, but it doesn't lack women. After that person and shall say, Bu Liuqing repeated this sentence again. Suddenly he chuckled and shook his head. This sentence is really not bad, not bad. Chen Mengqi, who was bowing in front of him, already felt a little dizzy. Elder Bu, please take into account that Chen Mengqi stuttered. I didn't discipline you properly and caused you to suffer. I will definitely punish you severely. Chen Mengqi almost cursed all 8 generations of the person who spoke. There were 1,000 or 2,000 people from the big clans here, and no one else said anything. Who the fuck are you trying to be? Since when was it your turn to speak? Have I given you face? Chapter 1005. No. Senior Bu. Chen Mengqi bowed. Knowing that there was no turning back now, he could only say, "Please punish me as you wish, Senior Bu." The Chen clan expert who had blurted out those words was already dumbfounded. Never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that the person he had scolded was actually a terrifying existence that the entire Chen clan could not afford to offend. now that he saw the second Grandmaster bowing before him. Unable to even apologize, he was dumbfounded. He was doomed. He was really doomed this time. He stood there blankly, feeling that the whole world was so far away from him at this moment. He did not even have the mood to come forward and apologize, because he knew that it was useless. Looking at the situation before him, even the Dharma Supreme might not be able to save him. Moreover, who was he? Why would the Dharma Supreme offend Buluqing for him? It was already good enough that he did not implicate the entire Qin clan. Buluqing looked at Chen Mengqi with uncertain eyes. He snorted and said, "Chen Mengqi, did you think that just because you retreated and allowed me to punish you, I would not be able to do it?" Chen Mengqi's scalp was covered in cold sweat. He bowed even lower and said, "I dare not. To be able to nurture such a descendant, your Chen clan is not too bad. Keeping you alive is also." Buluqing's voice became more and more sinister. The Dharma Supreme knew that once Buluqing finished his words, the Chen clan would really be gone. But for the sake of the top expert, he did not regret his words. He had to destroy the Chen clan. He hurriedly interrupted, "Brother Bu, you see, let's not implicate the entire Chen clan in this matter. It's just one person who spoke rudely. I will personally avenge Brother Bu." Without waiting for Buluqing to reply, he suddenly grabbed with his left hand. With a bang, that person was grabbed by him in midair. As he walked, he shrank until he was a dwarf less than 3 feet tall. Caught in his hand, he exploded with a bang, scattering into a cloud of bright red smoke. He disappeared from the world. If Chen Mengqi were to deal with this person personally, it would definitely not appease Buluqing's anger. In fact, it might even become more and more intense. That was why Chen Mengqi did not dare to do it himself. But for the Dharma Supreme to handle this matter was indeed giving Buluqing a lot of face. Because the Dharma Supreme did not have to do anything. What kind of status did he have? Now that he was forced by Buluqing to kill one of his own in public, no matter how unwilling Buluqing was, he had no choice but to give the Dharma Supreme face. If the Dharma Supreme's compromise was not enough, then, in that case, they could only start a war. And all the law enforcers in the world. Buluqing rolled his eyes and said resentfully, "Who asked you to be a busybody? You're quite fast." The Dharma Supreme smiled bitterly, knowing that Buluqing had already covered up the matter. He said, "Brother Bu, if I had not acted quickly enough, I would not have been able to handle it if Brother Bu had acted personally." Buluqing rolled his eyes and said, "Am I that unreasonable?" The Dharma Supreme and the supreme martial artists of the great clans all laughed bitterly. "Are you really that unreasonable? But the problem is, when have you, Buluqing, ever been reasonable?" Seeing that Chen Mengqi was still bowing, the Dharma Supreme said, "Brother Bu, let Mengqi get up. He's already so old and doesn't look good." Buluqing laughed coldly. "But I'm already so old. And this is the first time in 1,000 years that I've been called an idiot." Mo Qinggu, who was at the side, looked up and corrected him with a tilted face. "Teacher, you're wrong. This is probably the 100th time that you've been called this year." Buluqing was speechless, but he couldn't get angry. With a black face he said, "Good Xiaowu, those don't count." Everyone was sweating profusely. Even the Dharma Supreme was dumbfounded. Who would dare to call Buluqing an idiot over 100 times in a year? Buluqing said, "Since the Dharma Supreme has said so, why don't you get up quickly? Even the Dharma Supreme has pleaded for you in such a grand manner. If I still don't let you get up, where will the Dharma Supreme's face be?" Hearing this, Chen Mengqi didn't dare to get up even more. The Dharma Supreme's expression changed slightly, his eyes flashing. He said, "Brother Bu, I actually still have face with Brother Bu, haha?" Buluqing snorted. He really wanted to say, "What face do you have?" But thinking that his disciple was still in front of him, he had to maintain his image as a role model. He had no choice but to give him some face for now. Thus he put on a fake smile and said, "Of course. Of course." The Dharma Supreme laughed loudly, looking very pleased. He said, "Mengqi, apologize to Supreme Martial Artist Bu and let this matter rest." Haha. If Supreme Martial Artist Bu still doesn't let this matter rest, I'll look for him every day for tea. The Dharma Supreme's words were reserved and dignified. Dignified but with a deliberate closeness to Buluqing, It didn't damage his own dignity, and also elevated Bu Liuqing's status. Then he deliberately pulled their relationship closer. It could be said to be extremely appropriate. Chen Mingqi heaved a sigh of relief and said, "Thank you, Supreme Martial Artist Bu, for your magnanimity. Thank you, Dharma Supreme." Bu Liuqing snorted and ignored him. He was originally famous for being arrogant and unapproachable. Back then, he alone and with his sword, he ran rampant in the world for many years. Now that he had the same disciple as Ning Tianya, it was as if they were wearing the same pants. There was nothing to be concerned about. Only then did the Dharma Supreme look at Mo Qinggu with a smile and praise. "What a cute little girl. Brother Bu, is she your disciple?" Bu Liuqing snorted. There was finally a gentleness on his face, but he said in an eccentric tone, "Little Wu, do you know who this person with good hair is? Let Master introduce him to you, lest you offend people with your rude remarks in the future, when you roam the pugilistic world, and they come knocking on your door. Yes, this is the Dharma Supreme of the present world, a person that even I, your master, cannot afford to offend. A single word from him, and I have to obediently do as he says. Go forward and greet him as martial uncle." He paused and added in an eccentric tone, "If you see him in the future, don't ever call him a fool. This person is someone we can't afford to offend." The Dharma Supreme didn't know whether to laugh or cry at his words. He shook his head repeatedly. "Brother Bu Yu, are you trying to tear my face off while I'm still alive?" At the side, Chen Mingqi was sweating all over again. The people of the other great clans stared at Mo Qinggu one after another. They wanted to firmly remember this young face that was like a celestial fairy. Bu Liuqing's disciple. Seeing Bu Liuqing like this, it was obvious that this disciple was the apple of his eye. He couldn't possibly dote on her anymore. If anyone in their clan was foolish enough to offend this little girl, yes, Chen Mingqi in front of them was a good example. And it would happen again. It would definitely be much worse than Chen Mingqi's. "Haha, you are indeed a bright pearl, a fairy-like little girl. You are really lovable." The Dharma Supreme sized Mo Qinggu up and praised her. Suddenly he stopped abruptly, as if he had choked. Then, he looked at Mo Qinggu greedily. He looked her up and down, the light in his eyes getting brighter and brighter. It was as if he had discovered a rare treasure. For a moment, he was actually a little absent-minded. Finally he looked up in shock. "Brother Bu, this..." Bu Liuqing raised his head proudly and said calmly, "What is this?" The Dharma Supreme looked at Mo Qinggu for a while again. Finally he sighed. "Brother Bu, the aptitude of this little disciple of yours is really extraordinary." Bu Liuqing said reservedly, "It's nothing, just a heavenly body and innate spirit meridians. It's just average, haha. Although her aptitude is good, she still needs to work hard, haha." Upon hearing this, the great supreme martial artists at the side all shuddered at the same time. Heavenly body and innate spirit meridians. Could this be the legendary genius, who could automatically gather the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, without cultivating her own body? This little girl in front of them? They couldn't help but widen their eyes and look at Mo Qinggu. In an instant, dozens of pairs of eyes, like searchlights, were focused on Mo Qinggu. Then a series of gasps could be heard. Their expressions became even more fervent, especially his eyes, which were blazing hot, as if he wanted to swallow Mo Qinggu alive into his stomach. Indeed, sure enough, Mo Qinggu stood there for a while, and the spiritual energy of heaven and earth had already gathered around her, as if a thin layer of mist had gathered around her body. Heavenly body and innate spirit meridians. Then, they remembered Bu Liuqing's words. It's nothing, just a heavenly body and innate spirit meridians. They couldn't help but feel strange, and couldn't help but want to punch Bu Liuqing's smug face. At this moment, the indignation and disdain in their hearts actually suppressed their fear of Bu Liuqing. That kind of indescribable envy and jealousy made everyone feel even more depressed. Damn it! I've never seen someone as smug as you. And it's nothing, but your cheeks are cracked, and it's almost reaching your ears. Everyone's gaze and emotions were complicated. After witnessing the little girl's physique, and the fact that her master was actually Bu Liuqing, everyone could already foresee that in the future, An earth-shattering figure had already begun to grow up in front of them. As long as she could grow up, this little girl's future would definitely be much scarier than Buluqing's. Seeing everyone's expressions, Buluqing instantly felt all the gloominess in his heart disappear, as if he had eaten honey. That satisfaction was needless to say. Awesome. Too awesome. To have this moment, it was worth it. Being scolded by Ningtianya every day was also worth it. Envious? Envious? Jealous? Hate me? Waha, but this is my disciple. It's useless even if you're envious. The Dharma Supreme took in a breath, stepped forward, and said with a burning gaze, Brother Bu, how long have you taken in this disciple? Buluqing pretended to say, Oh, I forgot about such a small matter, let me think carefully. Bah! Everyone tilted their heads and spat at the same time, not bothering to hide their disdain. Even Chen Mengqi, who had just suffered a bellyful of anger, was among those who did so. How infuriating! Having taken in such a heaven-defying disciple. No matter who it was, they would probably remember the exact time of the day. And yet you still want to think about it. What's with the pretense? Chapter 1006. Everyone felt suffocated. The way they looked at Buluqing was not right. Some of them had already started to grit their teeth secretly. We know that you are very happy. If we had such a disciple, we might even be happier than you. But you can't be so smug. Under everyone's murderous gazes, Buluqing pretended to think hard for a while. His brows were almost wrinkled into a pile of dog poop. Then, he sighed with an especially pretentious expression and said, I really can't remember. It should be less than 2 years. Haha, it's just a small matter, not worth mentioning. It's just taking in a disciple, nothing much, nothing much. Ha 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 ha. At the end, he finally could not help but laugh happily. Fuck. Someone spat and cursed. It was Yi Di of the Yi clan. This elder master of the Yi clan really could not hold it in anymore. His face was contorted. Buluqing looked at him from the corner of his eyes, but did not get angry. Yi Di, do you also think it's nothing much? Haha. Yi Di swallowed his saliva, and resisted the urge to punch this smug old face in front of him. He said reluctantly, Yes, it's nothing much, haha, nothing much. Buluqing snorted and asked one by one, What about all of you? Do you also think it's nothing much? Everyone was at a loss for words. You can be smug all you want. But why do you have to force others to say it's nothing much? They had never seen such a thing. You're like a fucking bachelor who suddenly found a wife and had a child. You don't know what's going on anymore. If people don't praise you when they see you, it seems like you can't get rid of the itch in your heart, can you? Left with no choice, they could only twist their faces and murderously say, It's nothing much, nothing much. Buluqing laughed loudly. He felt that all the effort he had put in for his disciple, and all the grievances he had suffered at Ningtianya's hands over the past year, had been made up for in an instant. The Dharma Supreme, however, did not speak. He only looked at Mo Qinggu from head to toe. At this moment he finally said, Brother Bu, I have a presumptuous request. Buluqing waved his hand and said without giving face, Since it is a presumptuous request, I will definitely not agree to it. You better keep your mouth shut. The Dharma Supreme took a step forward, as if he did not hear what the Dharma Supreme said. He said indifferently, I want Brother Bu to let me have this disciple. What do you think? Ha! Buluqing tilted his head in bewilderment. He watched as the Dharma Supreme sized him up from head to toe before he spoke with a crooked mouth. I say, are you sick? The Dharma Supreme laughed and shook his head. Do I look sick to you, Brother Bu? Buluqing shook his head. But, how did you manage to say such words? I'm quite surprised. I've never heard of anyone bringing their disciple here to play, and I've actually met someone who's snatching a disciple. The Dharma Supreme took a deep breath, his gaze solemn. Brother Bu, I am not joking with you. He took a step forward, and looked at Mo Qinggu with a cherished gaze. He said, Brother Bu should know that my divine embodiment of heaven and earth technique requires the best qualifications, and that is to have innate spirit meridians. When I was apprenticed to my master had once said that our divine technique can only be passed down to those with innate spirit meridians. He told me that if I were to look for a successor in the future, I would rather let the technique go to waste and disappear into the dust of history. Therefore, it must be someone with innate spirit meridians. The Dharma Supreme's tone was very solemn and humble. He even stopped referring to himself as Your Highness in front of Bu Luqing and started referring to himself as little brother. Brother Bu, since then I have been searching for her. However, after so many years, I still haven't found her. Brother Bu, I have been searching for such a successor for 13,000 years. At this point, the Dharma Supreme sighed and paused for a moment. It was as if he wanted to let the concept of 13,000 years form a shock in Bu Luoqing's mind. The supreme martial artists at the side all sighed in sorrow. They could completely understand the bitterness, helplessness, and the hardships of the Dharma Supreme in his words. 13,000 years. What kind of concept was that? An ordinary person's lifespan was only 100 years. It was enough for a person to die of old age and reincarnate 130 times in each lifetime. They could also completely understand the Dharma Supreme's feelings. It was extremely difficult for a young man with good aptitude to find a master teacher. However, as long as he had perseverance and determination, there would always be someone who could recognize talent and take him in as a disciple. However, it was 100 times, 1,000 times harder for a peerless master to take in a disciple who was completely compatible with him than for a disciple to find a master teacher. There were tens of billions of people in the upper and lower three heavens. To find the aptitude that one needed among these tens of billions of people, think about it yourself. The Dharma Supreme said sincerely, if Brother Bu agrees, I will never forget Brother Bu's kindness for the rest of my life. No matter what Brother Bu asks me to do, even if it is to collapse the heavens and shatter the void, I will not frown. Every word and sentence of his was extremely solemn and sincere. Towards the end, it was almost as if he was making an oath. Everyone's hearts were heavy, and they were moved by his words. They could completely feel the Dharma Supreme's desire for such a disciple. It had already reached the point where he would do anything. Collapse the heavens and shatter the void. This was the highest level of cultivation in this world, and also a legend passed down forever in this world. In 10,000 years, only two people had been able to do it: Supreme Martial Artist Chen Feng and Supreme Martial Artist Lu Yan. If Supreme Martial Artists were legends that ordinary martial artists could only look up to in their lifetime, then collapsing the heavens and shattering the void would be the Supreme Martial Artist's lifelong dream. An immortal legend, such a promise was extremely heavy. When collapsing the heavens and shattering the void, there would be heavenly tribulation and countless dangers that could cause your 10,000 years of cultivation to vanish in an instant. Even people like Bu Luqing and Ning Tianya might not be able to get through it safely. Under such heavenly tribulation, the chances of Bu Luqing and Ning Tianya dying and dissipating were more than 50%. However, if the Dharma Supreme agreed to help, that possibility would be reduced to the minimum, and there was even a chance of him getting through it safely. After getting through it, it would be another immortal legend after Chen Feng and Lu Yun, and an extremely long lifespan. This was a huge temptation. It was also an offer that a peak supreme martial artist could not refuse. Everyone looked at Bu Luqing with a complicated expression. On one hand, they were shocked by the Dharma Supreme's promise, and on the other hand, they truly understood Bu Luoqing's cultivation from this sentence. It turned out that he was already close to that level. Bu Luqing snorted. Mo Qinggu looked at the Dharma Supreme, not knowing what to do. Her little hand grabbed Bu Luoqing's sleeve, and she pleaded pitifully, "Master, don't send me away." Bu Luqing instantly felt his heart ache, and he hurriedly comforted her. "My good little Wu, how can I bear to send you away? Especially to such a person. I would rather give away my heart and liver than to give you away." The Dharma Supreme said, "Brother Bu, if you agree, I can guarantee that this girl will not suffer any grievances in her life. If anyone dares to bully her, I will destroy their entire family." Bu Luqing fumed with anger. "There is no room for discussion on this matter. Look at how scared my disciple is. You've waited for 13,000 years. Is the waiting time too short?" The Dharma Supreme frowned. "But Brother Bu, your technique is a little too ordinary. You should know that my divine phenomenon of heaven and earth is the one that martial artists yearn for. The publicly acknowledged #1 technique in the world. Buluching snorted. Your divine embodiment of heaven and earth is the #1 technique? Then, where do you place the heavenly divine technique of the tribulation sword master? Once this sentence came out, everyone's expression changed instantly. The heavenly divine technique of the tribulation sword master. These few words were a huge taboo to these people. However, Buluching had said it out loud without any restraint. In front of the Dharma Supreme, in front of all the leaders of the big clans, the Dharma Supreme narrowed his eyes and said solemnly, "So Brother Bu, you're not going to fulfill my request?" Buluching stretched out 2 fingers, shook them and said, "#1. This is my disciple, a treasure that I've only found after thousands of years of searching. There's no way I'll just give it away. The only possibility is to kill me." The Dharma Supreme smiled bitterly. With Buluching's current cultivation, who dared to say that they could kill him? If they were not careful, they might even be killed by him. #2. The Dharma Supreme sighed in his heart. He had already decided to give up on this idea, but he was still reluctant to part with it. He thought to himself, when there's no one around, I'll have a good talk with Buluching. At this moment, in front of so many people, it's really a little inconvenient. Buluching said coldly, "#2, even if I agree, there's someone else who won't. This disciple doesn't belong to me alone, but to both of us." "Someone else? Who?" The Dharma Supreme frowned and asked. "Her other master, Ning Tianya," Buluching said with some displeasure. "To put it bluntly, I only have half of this disciple." Buluching also only had half. Ning Tianya. When this name was spoken, it was like a bolt from the blue that struck everyone's heads. Even the Dharma Supreme's pupils shrank. The desire in his eyes completely disappeared, replaced by a bitter smile. With a thud, someone fell to the ground, his mouth and eyes slanted. "What the heck, this is really too shocking." The second grandmaster of the Chun clan, Chun Mengqi, couldn't help but break out in cold sweat again. The hand that he used to wipe the sweat away trembled slightly. So provoking Buluching now is equivalent to provoking Ning Tianya at the same time? Oh my god. I'm really lucky today. The other supreme martial artists of the big clans were also shocked. They looked at the little girl with eyes that were not only drooling with desire, but also with a hint of fear and dread. Chapter 1007. Ning Tianya. The Dharma Supreme smiled bitterly. He knew that there was no chance for this disciple. If it was only Buluching, he could still use some tricks. If it really didn't work, he would rather pay a huge price to kill Buluching and snatch the disciple. Although he had no choice but to take that step, the Dharma Supreme already had such thoughts in his mind. It wasn't that Buluching couldn't be killed. As long as the Dharma Supreme fought with him, together with the law enforcement elders and the supreme martial artists of the big clans, it was not impossible to kill Buluching. But Ning Tianya also had a share in this disciple. If that was the case, then this plan would be completely useless. This didn't mean that Ning Tianya was harder to deal with than Buluching. But Ning Tianya and Buluching teaming up was no longer as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. When the two of them teamed up, even the Dharma Supreme had to retreat. Before this, everyone knew that the strongest team in the world was Yulingxue and Feng Yuro. But now things had definitely changed. Ning Tianya and Buluching had already taught a disciple together. Then was there any need to talk about their relationship? Perhaps. It could be said that if there was someone whose cultivation was on par with Buluching, the only way for the two of them to fight was to perish together. However, if Ning Tianya was standing behind Buluching during the battle, then it could be said with certainty that Ning Tianya didn't even need to breathe, and Buluching would definitely win. No matter how conceited the Dharma Supreme was, he definitely wouldn't dare to say that he wouldn't be defeated by Ning Tianya and Buluching teaming up. What a joke. If the two of them teamed up, he would be satisfied if he could escape with his life. Should he mobilize the big clans to encircle and annihilate these two people? The Dharma Supreme didn't allow himself to think further, because it would definitely be a fierce battle, and the final victor might not even be his side. So Brother Ning also has a share in this disciple. If that's the case, I've been rude. The Dharma Supreme looked at Mo Qinggu with some reluctance and smiled. Buluqing was instantly unhappy. You want to snatch my disciple, but not Ning Tianya's? Compared to Ning Tianya, is there such a big difference? Buluqing frowned and looked at the Dharma Supreme with some hostility. The Dharma Supreme smiled bitterly. Brother Bu, you know what I mean. Buluqing said angrily. How would I know what you mean? I only know that I introduced my disciple to you. How could you elders not bring out any greeting gifts? That's too embarrassing. Everyone burst out laughing. Fuck, you took in such a good brother. We can't wait to be envious and jealous. And you actually came to us to ask for a greeting gift. Meeting gift? Mo Qinggu tilted her head and looked at her master. Her clear eyes lit up. Master, is there really a greeting gift? That's for sure. Buluqing had already made up his mind to extort him. That's great. If that's the case, then I won't tell Master Ning about you sending me out. The little loli happily said. I don't. My little great-aunt. Buluqing was in a difficult situation. In fact, he seemed to have lost half of his stature in an instant. You mustn't tell this to that bastard Ning Tianya. That old thief will come after me if you tell him. Mo Qinggu smiled happily. Buluqing was flustered and exasperated. Holding his disciple's little hand, he came before the Dharma Supreme and instructed. Call him uncle. Martial uncle. Mo Qinggu sweetly called out. Stretch out your hand. Buluqing said. Mo Qinggu obediently stretched out her fair and tender little hands. Like two flowers blooming under the Dharma Supreme's nose. Raising her head, she looked at the Dharma Supreme with a pitiful gaze. Master and disciple. One was shameless, and the other was naive and innocent. Their cooperation was flawless. Being looked at by such a pair of eyes, even the most stingy person would start to fork out money. The Dharma Supreme smiled bitterly. What else could he do at this stage? What could he do when he met such a troublemaker like Buluqing? Even if he was the Dharma Supreme, what could he do? It's fate that brought us together. I really like this little girl. The Dharma Supreme smiled kindly and took out a piece of wood. It was as thick and long as a finger, and stuffed it into Mo Qinggu's hand. Take this piece of wood and play with it. Her little girl. If you are unhappy with your master in the future, remember to look for me. I live in the law enforcement city. You just have to go there and say my name. Someone will bring you to see me. Do you understand? Although he knew that it was hopeless, the Dharma Supreme still did not give up on the idea of poaching her. If your disciple runs away from home, then don't blame me, right? Buluqing rolled his eyes and looked at the sky. He thought to himself, I've been treating this little girl like an ancestor. Will she jump ship to your side? Dream on. Oh. Mo Qinggu held the small piece of wood in her hand, and was disappointed. She could not help but curse silently. Stingy. She had never seen someone give a piece of wood as a greeting gift. Moreover, it was such a small piece. Although it was very attractive, a piece of wood was still a piece of wood. Wow. Buluqing's eyes lit up. Starwood. Dharma Supreme, ha ha. You really have something good. Ha ha. Xiao, this is something good. Quickly thank Uncle Dharma Supreme. I will make a ring for you when we get back. Thank you, Uncle Dharma Supreme. The little girl heard that this thing was something good. Even her own master was praising it so highly. She immediately became excited and thanked him sweetly. Then, she turned to Buluqing and said, Master, you have to make a nicer ring. Buluqing was all smiles and agreed. The Dharma Supreme glared at Buluqing and turned to smile at Mo Qinggu. No need to be so polite. Xiao, what a cute little girl. In his heart, he wished he could strangle Buluqing to death. You bastard, after extorting something from me, you actually reduced my seniority. Uncle Dharma Supreme, doesn't that mean you are younger? However, Buluqing had already held Mo Qinggu's hand and walked to Yi. He introduced, this you can also call him Uncle Dharma Supreme. This is the elder master of the number 1 clan. He must have a lot of good stuff in his hands. I'm afraid he won't take it out just because he is angry. Yi immediately had a taste of the Dharma Supreme's feelings just now. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry, speechless and conflicted. He really wanted to punch this face in front of him, but he didn't dare to. He forced a smile and said, "This is a welcome gift." Then he reached into his bosom and took out a red object that was as big as a goose egg. "This is the inner core of a spirit beast at the peak of level 10. Hee, it's not a good thing. Just take it and play with it." "Thank you, Uncle Dharma Supreme." Mo Chingu reached out and received it. Everyone was stunned. The inner core of a 10th grade peak spirit beast. It was definitely priceless, and Yi gave it away without batting an eyelid. Yi was really rich. Yi was conflicted. "I don't want to give it away either. However, Bu Liuqing's eyes are looking at me like he is searching for treasure. If I take out something inferior, won't I offend him immediately?" At this moment, there was a sudden cooing sound. The little white fox on Mo Qingwu's shoulder suddenly jumped down like a sharp sword and landed in Mo Qingwu's palm. It nudged Mo Qingwu's hand with its pink nose and raised its head, its eyes full of desire. Mo Qingwu asked in surprise, "Little Snow, do you want to eat it?" The little fox nodded without hesitation. "Then eat it." Mo Qingwu smiled tenderly and picked up the inner core. The little fox was overjoyed. It stretched out its neck and swallowed the inner core of a 10th grade spirit beast in one gulp. Then, it wiped its mouth in satisfaction and went back to squat on Mo Qingwu's shoulder. It closed its eyes and started to feel somewhat lazy. Wind Fox, 10th grade peak spirit beast. All the supreme martial artists present were stunned. This little fox could actually eat the inner core of a 10th grade peak spirit beast and didn't have a big reaction after eating it. Doesn't this mean that it's at least a 10th grade peak spirit beast? They didn't expect that this little girl not only had 2 peak supreme martial artists as her masters, but also had a 10th grade peak spirit beast as her pet. Everyone was sweating at the thought of this. If there was anyone who was blind enough to provoke this little girl, those below the level of 8th grade martial saint would probably be swallowed alive by this seemingly harmless little pet, even before the 2 supreme martial artists, Bu Liuqing and Ning Tianya, did anything. This little girl's body was actually full of traps. Anyone who stepped into any of them would be doomed eternally. However, this little girl was really a spendthrift. A priceless 10th grade peak spirit beast's inner core was given to her pet to eat without batting an eyelid. What a waste! Yi looked at the little fox on Mo Qingwu's shoulder, and the corners of his mouth twitched secretly. He thought that this little thing could gain Bu Liuqing's favor and take the top spot. Who would have thought that in the blink of an eye, it would be fed to a fox? This was the wind fox that had been following Mo Qingwu in the northern wastelands of the 3 heavens. Because of Mo Qingwu's love, the little fox enjoyed the limelight. It ate all kinds of treasures and shared cultivation resources with Mo Qingwu. Even when it slept in Mo Qingwu's pocket and bathed in spiritual energy. At this moment, it was already at the 10th grade peak and infinitely close to the 11th grade. After eating this 10th grade peak spirit beast's inner core, it would probably be the first wind fox in history to break through to the 11th grade. Bu Liuqing didn't mind at all. He held Mo Qingwu's hand and walked to the next person. "This is Xiaosei. You can call him Martial Uncle. He's the ancestor of the Xiao clan. He has a lot of good stuff." "Martial Uncle?" Mo Qingwu stretched out her little hand obediently. Xiaosei laughed and said, "This martial uncle of mine is a little shabby. He doesn't have anything good. He only knows how to fight and play with swords. How about this? I'll give little Wu niece a short sword. Girls can also use it for self-defense." Haha. Although he said so, everyone knew that a weapon that Xiaosei gave out couldn't be ordinary. At the very least, it had to be a divine weapon. However, they didn't see that Mo Qingwu and Bu Liuqing were secretly curling their lips. Chapter 1008. Sure enough, the next moment, Xiaosei flipped his hand, and an antique short sword with a sheath appeared in his palm. As soon as he pulled it out, cold light shot out. Everyone's face was green under the direct light. A wisp of cold air was projected just like that. Everyone who was close to it felt goosebumps all over their bodies. It was definitely a divine weapon. This short sword is called the Soft Heart Sword. I accidentally entered the Black Blood Forest and obtained it from there. Xiaosei said. Although it's not a top-notch divine weapon, it's exquisite and elegant. For a girl like Xiaowu to carry such a short sword for self-defense, it really compliments her. Buluqing pursed his lips and looked at the short sword. He actually didn't ask Imo Qinggu to take it. It was obvious that he didn't like the short sword. Everyone was curious. What's going on? How could he not be interested in such a divine weapon? It shouldn't be. Xiao Sei held the short sword, but the other party didn't take it. He felt a little awkward. It wasn't right to take it back, and it was even more wrong to hold it there. Buluqing sighed and said, Xiaowu, where's your Qingwu dream saber? Imo Qingwu looked at him hesitantly. Teacher, this isn't good, right? In the little girl's pure heart, she felt that it was already too much to embarrass others like this. It would be too much to use the Qingwu dream saber to attack others. Buluqing rolled his eyes and said, It shouldn't be, but I hate it the most when people use shoddy products to pass them off as good ones. Imo Qingwu had no choice but to pick up her saber. It was also in a simple sheath. Everyone looked at her with disdain. Even if this saber of yours is a divine weapon, how could it be better than this short sword by several levels? The next moment, Imo Qingwu pulled out the saber from the sheath. Clang! A soft sound like a dragon's roar was heard. Instantly red light shone brightly. This saber was made by the Tribulation Sword Master with all his heart. The Qingwu Dream Saber, which used all rare materials, appeared in front of the supreme martial artists at this moment, in a dreamlike manner. Imo Qingwu, who was holding the Qingwu Dream Saber, seemed to have changed into a different person at this moment. Red light surrounded her body and bits of starlight shone. At this moment, Imo Qingwu held the dreaming of a gentle dance saber. She seemed to have experienced some changes in her state of mind. There was a happy and satisfied smile on her lips, and she seemed to be a little shy. His red clothes fluttered as he stood in the gentle red light. The starlight complemented her snow-white face, her delicate eyebrows, her straight nose, and her delicate red lips. Her big eyes seemed to be able to speak. Everyone present had the illusion that a fairy was riding on a colorful cloud in the sky. She was wearing a red dress and was dancing gracefully in the white snow. Everyone seemed to be dazzled and bewildered. He felt that this was not a little girl at all. She was clearly a peerless beauty, but there was a trace of sorrow on her face. There was a trace of sadness, and a heart full of deep affection. They danced gently and passionately, filled with an ethereal and unreal feeling. What they didn't know was that if Chu Yang were to see this moment of drawing the saber, he would definitely be dumbfounded and tears would flow down his face. This was exactly the image of Imo Qingwu dancing gracefully in a red dress that Chu Yang had seen in the void when he was on the verge of death in his previous life. As she danced, the world was in a state of sadness. Just by drawing the saber, it actually created a beautiful, fairyland-like dreamy feeling. There was no need to compare at all. Xiao Sei sighed dejectedly and said, This saber of this girl's is thousands of times stronger than my short sword. It can't even be compared. He took a step back and didn't speak anymore. Xiao Sei, I'm not humiliating you, am I? Buluqing said. Everyone rolled their eyes at once. If you're not humiliating him, what are you? Unexpectedly, Xiao Sei nodded and said, That's right. With this saber in hand, all the sabers and swords in the world are like grass. I won't even look at them. What's there to humiliate? Buluqing laughed loudly. However, you still owe my disciple a meeting gift. I'll remember this debt for you. Everyone was sweating profusely. It's already like this, and I still owe your disciple a meeting gift. Next, Buluqing extorted them one by one. Then, he took Imo Qingwu and left with a smile. His sleeves fluttered as he entered Tianji City. Behind him, everyone was silent. This old thing. The Dharma Supreme shook his head and sighed. Let's not just stand there, let's go in together. Everyone nodded in agreement. Although the incident with Buluqing just now, it didn't affect the dignity of these people at all. What kind of person was Buluqing? He was publicly recognized as the pinnacle of the world. It was already an honor for him to ask for something from you. There were quite a number of supreme martial artists here, a total of 50 of them. However, only 10 of them were worthy of Buluqing asking for something, and all of them were even addressed as Uncle Master by Buluqing's disciple. Although this Uncle Master was really a little too valuable, All the supreme martial artists felt a little pained, but they didn't show it on their faces. Furthermore, the other people were looking at them with envy in their eyes. Why didn't supreme martial artist Bu ask for something from me? Because my level isn't high enough. Sigh. Thinking of this, some of the supreme martial artists who didn't get asked for something from Bu Luqing started to feel sorry for themselves. Life was such a wonderful thing. When you were nothing, asking for something from others was humbling and losing your dignity, especially when you reached out and forced something from others. That was what a hooligan, ruffian, or robber would do. But when you were high and mighty, reaching out and asking for something of the same nature was a reflection of your demeanor. Moreover, you were giving a lot of face to the person you were asking for something from. Not only would others not scold you, they would even feel honored and grateful to you. And this was commonly known as status. Therefore, although the supreme martial artists felt pained, they wouldn't blame anyone. The one who asked for something was Bu Luqing. The one who received it was the disciple of both Bu Luqing and Ning Tianya. Only the second grandmaster of the Zhuge clan, Zhuge Hutu, who was walking at the back, had a bitter expression on his face. Heavens earth! Our Zhuge clan has really hit the jackpot this time. The second grandmasters of the big clans had gathered. The Dharma Supreme, Bu Luqing, Yu Lingxue and Feng Yuro were all here. And there was also a mysterious woman in the city. That mysterious woman was at least of Bu Liuqing's level. My God. Once a fight breaks out, I'll go back and give that little fool Zhuge Shanyan a good spanking. Damn it, that bastard has a crow's mouth. He still remembered that the little boy had jokingly said that day. If Ning Tianya and Bu Luqing also come, well, this damn mouth is simply a jinx. Tianji City Orchard Palace. Zi Xiecheng, who was practicing martial arts, opened her eyes quietly. There was a trace of interest in her eyes. She said, "A few more powerful people have come." Chu Yang, who was opposite her, asked with great interest, "How powerful are they?" "The four of them may not be below Yu Lingxue and Feng Yuro." Zi Xiecheng frowned slightly and said, "Moreover, there are two of them who are definitely above them." Oh, Chu Yang frowned. Suddenly he was startled. "Why did you suddenly mention Yu Lingxue and Feng Yuro? A few days ago, I fought with the couple." Zi Xiecheng said lightly, "Those two people are not weak at all." "Huh." Chu Yang's eyes widened. "Fought? How?" "Of course it was just me. I beat them both." Zi Xiecheng said lightly. "You won?" Chu Yang was really shocked this time. He didn't know when this sister actually went out to fight with Yu Lingxue and Feng Yuro. He suddenly remembered the news he heard at Shuiyu restaurant that day, and instantly understood. It seemed that it was that day. "What do you think? Will I lose?" Zi Xiecheng looked at him lightly. Chu Yang was speechless. However, the Moon Breeze couple is still not bad. Zi Xiecheng looked at Chu Yang meaningfully. She said, "Moreover, because the martial arts they practice is Moon Breeze as one, so, haha, it's also a chance for you." "My chance?" Chu Yang was stunned. "Yes, this is your chance." Zi Xiecheng said calmly, "Wind and moon as one is a kind of dual cultivation technique. Wind and moon as one. Moon breeze as one is the most efficient dual cultivation technique. Once you practice it, you will never be separated. Once you practice it, you will never leave each other. However, there is also a huge disadvantage. If you can't practice it to the highest level of dual cultivation, you will never be able to have a child." Chu Yang opened his mouth wide. "Huh. Because no matter when and where the two of them are, this moon breeze as one will always be in harmony and will never be separated. Even if they are separated by two places, their divine senses can still be entangled with each other. Therefore, they are absolutely inseparable. But if they want to have a child, there are only two possibilities. One is to master the martial arts and be able to freely control the operation of the martial arts. The second is to stop using divine senses and not operate the martial arts. But the two of them have already reached this stage. Obviously it is impossible. But not having a child is the biggest regret of their lives." Zi Xiecheng looked at Chu Yang quietly. "You understand what I mean?" Chu Yang nodded and then shook his head. "I understand what you mean. But what do you mean by saying that this is a chance for me?" Zi Xiecheng was exasperated. "You really don't know?" Chu Yang scratched his head. But Fengyuro, she also doesn't like me. And my cultivation is so low. I can't use force even if I want to. Zi Xieching's face instantly turned red, and her eyebrows raised. She kicked this detestable guy, and made him roll on the ground. Bastard! What are you thinking of in that dirty mind of yours? Chu Yang was sent flying by the kick. He laughed loudly. Then he said, what is the solution? If it is based on medical skills, I really don't know what medical skills can make such a technique give birth. Zi Xieching waved her hand, and a huge divine sense shrouded the small courtyard. You may not be able to, but you are the Tribulation Sword Master. There is a solution. Zi Xieching said lightly. As long as you can open up a new space in your tribulation space, and can accommodate living people, bring the two of them in. Then, use the heaven-splitting divine technique to isolate their divine senses, and use your treasure, the lust poison of the lust dragon, to feed each of them. That will do. Chapter 1009. Chu Yang frowned and said, I see. But then he thought again and said, that's not right. Why would the two of them agree to this method? Chu Yang smiled bitterly. In my tribulation space, their words and actions can't be hidden from me. They are all at the peak of supreme martial artist level. How could they? What you said is equivalent to not saying anything at all. Zi Xieching's face was red and she said angrily, with their cultivation, if they don't want you to hear and see, do you think you can peek at them with your insignificant strength? Chu Yang still shook his head. It's still absolutely not feasible. No matter what, they won't agree. Even if I can't see it, this is still a huge humiliation to the two of them. So, you're totally wrong about this matter. Chu Yang had absolute confidence that the Moon Breeze couple would definitely not accept such a method. Even if this method had a 10% chance of success, it was still absolutely not feasible. This involved the most fundamental issue of human dignity. If it were an ordinary person, they would definitely not agree, let alone Yu Lingxue and Fengyuro, whose names shook the heavens. Zi Xieching fell silent. After a long while she said, maybe I'm thinking too simply. The shame and dignity of humans and some other things are all things that I can't understand now, or I haven't tried to understand. Chu Yang nodded. That's right. Zi Xieching frowned and said, in that case it's going to be troublesome. Chu Yang said in horror. You haven't already recommended me, have you? Not yet. Zi Xieching frowned and said, but I've already told them that the Moon Breeze couple is not infertile. There's a way. She smiled bitterly. Right now, the two of them are probably looking for me all over Tianji City. I originally planned to recommend you to them once they find me. Then when the time is right, you'll help them. Now it's a little troublesome. Chu Yang was stunned. He suddenly shouted, Big sister, you're not just a little troublesome. You're in big trouble. If I really told them that, I'm sure I'll be killed immediately. I'm going to faint. Big sister, you actually let the husband and wife do that right under my nose. And you even want me to use the heavenly level technique to help. Chu Yang's face was full of black lines. He said speechlessly, Big sister, what are you thinking? Zi Xieching was also a little embarrassed. Realizing her mistake, she blushed and said, I didn't think so much at that time. Chu Yang was speechless. He stood up and turned around. Then he said, You still can't think of this? Io, my big sister Zi, if you put yourself in their shoes, if we were to do it in front of others. Shut up. Pa. Puff, 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 puff. Chu Yang hadn't even finished speaking when he was slapped twice in the face. Then his lower abdomen was kicked a dozen times in quick succession. His buttocks flew out like a shooting star with a whooshing sound. With a loud bang, a hole was smashed into the wall 70 feet away. Then, it tumbled a few times before it fell to the ground with its arms and legs spread out. Zi Xieching's angry and embarrassed voice could be heard. She seemed to be gritting her teeth. Chu Yang, you damned rogue. Chu Yang lay down with his arms and legs spread out. He looked at the sky speechlessly. He wanted to cry but had no tears. What happened to my hooligan? Am I being wronged? I swear to the heavens with my conscience as my witness, it was really just an example. I really didn't mean anything else. Just as he was about to get up from the ground, he smelled a delicate fragrance. He opened his eyes and saw Wu Chanqian standing right in front of him. Why are you here? Chu Yang got up from the ground awkwardly and patted the dust off his body. I thought these few days, you've been treating my injuries, so I came to see where you're staying. Wu Qianqian smiled and looked at him curiously. What happened to you? When I just arrived, I saw you rushing out like a cannonball. What's so urgent that you didn't even jump over the wall, but directly rushed out from the wall? And your buttocks were facing forward. Chu Yang grinned awkwardly. You saw it all. I saw it all. Minister Chu, don't tell me you were kicked out by someone? Wu Qianqian playfully blinked her eyes. She playfully looked at the clear and petite footprint on Chu Yang's chest. She smiled faintly. I didn't expect our all-powerful Minister Chu to have such a side to him. Chu Yang's face was full of black lines. He spread out his hands and said, it's my bad mouth that angered the beauty. Angered the beauty? Wu Qianqian's eyes flashed with a strange light. She said, don't tell me that one of your sweethearts is inside. She walked in as she said, this I want to see for myself. Chu Yang wanted to stop her in a hurry. He said anxiously, No, this. Wu Qianqian reached out and pushed him away gently. She smiled and said, what are you afraid of? I'm a married woman now. Don't tell me I'll eat your sweetheart up. Chu Yang was tongue-tied. Wu Qianqian had already pushed open the door and walked in. Chu Yang had no choice but to follow behind Wu Qianqian into the orchard palace. He thought to himself, what's wrong with this? I'm not afraid of crooked shadows. There are 2 women inside. One is my sister, and the other has nothing to do with me. There are no emotional entanglements. It's fortunate that there aren't any. Otherwise, I'm still far from being able to beat her. How am I going to spend my days? Wouldn't that mean that even the right to sleep with her would have to depend on her mood? Fuck. That's impossible. Moreover, Wu Qianqian is now the Empress of Iron Cloud. No matter what, she can't control me. Even though he said this, Chu Yang still felt that something was very wrong in his heart. Even he himself didn't know where this feeling of uneasiness came from. The environment of your orchard palace is really not bad. Although it's not as central as the Jiaxiu building where I live, in terms of elegance, it's much better. Wu Qianqian was full of praise for the layout of the orchard palace as she walked. Chu Yang's heart skipped a beat. He thought of Diwu Qingrou's fragrance when he first arrived. He couldn't help but be startled. He said, could it be that Diwu Qingru used some tricks to get this place for me? But why? These few days, Wu Qianqian was extremely comfortable. Every day, Chu Yang would go to treat her injuries. To Wu Qianqian, being able to see each other every day was already an infinite satisfaction and happiness. Although Chu Yang still misunderstood, Wu Qianqian already knew that there was only a thin layer of window paper left. It would be broken with a poke. Once Chu Yang knew the truth, with his temper, he would definitely not let her down. Therefore, she was very happy during this period of time. She even had some expectations. After Chu Yang left, she didn't go out. She stayed in the Jiaxiu building to cultivate. Moreover, the 2 masters, Yu Lingxue and Feng Yuro, didn't alert the Zhuge clan. They only took advantage of their disciple and stayed in the Jiaxiu building to cultivate in seclusion. In the Moon Breeze couple, Yu Lingxue was the leader. Therefore, he was also under a lot of pressure. Since the battle with Zi Xieqing, he basically cultivated in seclusion every day to cultivate in the new realm. Chu Yang went a few times, but didn't see him even once. This day, when Feng Yuro and Yu Lingxue went out to welcome the Dharma Supreme, it was actually a form of battle. According to Yu Lingxue's intention, if they were to fight, they would fight vigorously and vigorously. Whoever won or lost, lived or died, there would be no complaints. Wu Qianqian didn't think much of this. Since they were enemies, why did they have to be so obvious? You can be open to others, but others may not be open to you. She tried to persuade him, but Yu Lingxue was stubborn. How could he listen to her? He actually went out directly. Wu Qianqian had no choice but to look for Chu Yang to discuss. Every time she reached a point where she couldn't do anything, Wu Qianqian would feel a sense of reliance. If Chu Yang was by her side, he would definitely have a solution. Moreover, Wu Qianqian was also very helpless. Some solutions could be used by Chu Yang, but she couldn't. The difference between a man and a woman was actually expressed in every aspect. Therefore she did what she thought. After her master left, she went straight to the orchard palace. Who would have thought that she would coincidentally see her omnipotent hero being kicked out by someone? Looking at the shoe print on her chest, she was obviously very petite. Wu Qianqian's heart suddenly skipped a beat. Such violence. She suddenly felt a little uneasy. This woman was obviously very important to Chu Yang. She had never seen anyone treat Chu Yang like this. But Chu Yang didn't care at all. Looking at it this way, this woman was definitely the one Chu Yang loved the most. She was also the biggest obstacle in her future. Moreover, she was also going to be a sister who would accompany her for the rest of her life. Thinking of this, Wu Qianqian felt very shy, a little fearful and a little indignant. With such a bad temper, how would they get along in the future? No matter what, the man was the head of the family. How could he be kicked around by a woman? Therefore, no matter what, Wu Qianqian had to meet this woman today. This was a matter of life and marriage. She couldn't be careless. It was better to have a good relationship in advance than to have an awkward relationship in the future. Wu Qianqian blushed and her heart thumped wildly. She actually had the feeling of an ugly daughter-in-law is about to meet her parents-in-law. Even when Chu Yang was beside her, she didn't hear what he said clearly. She dizzily stepped into the orchard palace. Just as she entered, she heard a voice angrily scolding, "Chu Yang! Stinky hooligan! Stinky hooligan! Chu Yang!" Wu Qianqian was stunned and turned to look at Chu Yang. Chu Yang rubbed his nose and smiled bitterly. He spread his hands and said helplessly, "Actually, it's just a misunderstanding. When did I act like a hooligan? You know me too. I've always been upright, pure and noble. I don't even know how to act like a hooligan." Wu Qianqian wrinkled her nose and snorted. She said, "You don't know?" Chu Yang said seriously, "I really don't know. Why don't you teach me?" Wu Qianqian blushed and rolled her eyes at him. She scolded, "I didn't scold you wrongly, stinky hooligan." Chapter 10:10. Chu Yang was really helpless now. "I really don't know how to be a hooligan. I'm definitely not bragging about this. Usually, it's the women who are hooligan to me, and I'm always cold towards them." He was truly full of righteousness, and his sleeves were clean like the wind. "When we were in the lower three heavens, you and I went to many banquets and occasions, and we've met before. When have I ever been a hooligan to anyone? Why are you turning your back on me now?" Wu Qianqian snorted and asked in a low voice, "What did you do? How did you make this sister so angry?" "Isn't it because of you?" Chu Yang wanted to say, "Isn't it because of your master?" But when the words were at the tip of his tongue, he suddenly stopped and became speechless. How could he say this out loud? Should he say, "Because of your master's infertility"? If he really said this, what would Wu Qianqian think? He could only shut his mouth awkwardly. However, this sentence had a different meaning in Wu Qianqian's ears. "Isn't it because of you? Because of me? Why is it because of me? Could it be?" Wu Qianqian instantly became extremely shy. She rolled her eyes at him and scolded in a low voice, "Hooligan!" Chu Yang was speechless. "Looks like I can't take off this hooligan hat today." While they were talking, the two had already reached the door. Zi Xieching naturally had already sensed that there were guests. She lifted the door curtain and came out. When she lifted the door curtain, one inside the door and the other outside the door, the two of them were stunned. Both Wu Qianqian and Zi Xieching did not expect that the person standing in front of them would be such a beauty. Zi Xieching was dressed in white today, like snow and frost. Standing in the door, she was like 1,000 years of ice and snow, lonely and cold. Wu Qianqian was still dressed in black, but she looked simple and elegant, with an inexplicable faint temperament, like a deep valley orchid blooming alone. Fragrant alone. 1,000 years of ice and snow. Even after 1,000 years, even after going through the vicissitudes of life, was still lonely and cold. A deep valley orchid, no matter if there was someone or not, was still blooming alone and fragrant alone. Facing each other, the two of them had the same thought. There's actually such a beauty in the world. Chu Yang, who was at the side, was also stunned. When the two peerless beauties stood together like this, the visual impact on men was absolutely unparalleled. Actually, there were still some differences between the two. Zi Xieching's face was flawless, exquisite and graceful, unattainable, but with a kind of illusory indifference. There was only one word to describe Zi Xieching. Perfect. It was perfect. The most beautiful eyes, the most beautiful eyebrows, the most beautiful face shape, the most beautiful lips, the most beautiful ears, the most beautiful skin, the most beautiful hair, all gathered on one person. It was no exaggeration to say that this kind of beauty did not belong to the human world. Compared to Zi Xieching, Wu Qianqian's looks were not as perfect. However, Wu Qianqian's beauty was real. Moreover, there was a kind of extreme toughness hidden within an extreme softness. She was extremely cold, yet she could make people feel warm. It made people feel that this woman needed protection the moment they saw her. But when they took a closer look, they realized that she didn't need it. It was a beauty of extreme contradiction. On Wu Qianqian's body, it was completely unified. If she were to be described as a flower, Zi Xieching would be like a snow lotus in the ice and snow at the end of the vast ocean, proud and arrogant. On the other hand, Wu Qianqian would be like a pure white orchid on the cliff of a quiet valley, leaving the world alone with its fragrance, pure and beautiful. This is... Zi Xieching looked at Wu Qianqian silently for a while and asked Chu Yang. Well, let me introduce you. This is Miss Zi. She is slightly older than us. You can call her big sister Zi. Chu Yang introduced attentively. This is my senior sister Wu Qianqian. I've mentioned her to you before. Zi Xieching replied with an O and smiled, like 100 flowers blooming together. Miss Wu is really a rare guest. Please come in. She turned and asked Chu Yang. What do you mean? Do you mean I'm very old? Chu Yang was sweating profusely. He finally remembered something. Women. Especially for beautiful women, age was their biggest taboo. If one said that she was old, she would automatically think of the word old. If one said that she was young, she would automatically think of the word not mature enough, not charming enough. Chu Yang sighed in his heart. Being a man is not easy. I really don't know how those men with multiple wives and concubines live. Big sister Zi. Wu Qianqian smiled slightly, with a hint of flattery and humility, but also appropriately showed a neither servile nor overbearing attitude. She smiled gently and said, Let's not lower ourselves to his level. Well, we immediately pulled the relationship between the two of them closer, and excluded Chu Yang from the equation. Zi Xieching blinked and smiled. Sister, you're right. Come, please come in, I'll make you some tea. She held Wu Qianqian's arm, and walked intimately into the room. Chu Yang was a little stunned. He really didn't expect that women were more straightforward than men in making friends. It was only the first time they met, and they were already so intimate. Wu Qianqian said, How would I dare to trouble big sister Zi? Just tell me where to put it. I'll do it myself. She looked at Zi Xieching, and actually couldn't see through her cultivation. She couldn't help but be shocked. Looks like this sister is an expert. Zi Xieching said, Sister, you're really talented. You're already a third-grade martial saint. It's really incredible to have such cultivation at such a young age. Wu Qianqian smiled and said, Big sister, you're even more brilliant. I can't even see through you. The two of them talked intimately across the table. But in the end it was totally irrelevant. Shrouded by clouds and mist, one smiled gently while the other smiled amiably. But both of them knew that this wasn't the case. Chu Yang looked at them with a headache. Wu Qianqian thought, no wonder Chu Yang is so devoted to her and can't forget her. She's indeed a peerless beauty. In comparison, I'm really a little inferior. I wonder how she's looking at me now. Zi Xieching thought. This little Anai seems to be infatuated with Chu Yang. One look, and I can tell that she's infatuated with him. Looking at this etiquette, it seems like she's treating me as Chu Yang's legal wife. Is she here as a concubine to show weakness? Little Anai, you're mistaken. I won't expose you. Let's see what little Anai has to say first. Miss Wu, there must be something important for you to come here. Shall I leave for a while? Zi Xieching smiled reservedly. No need, no need. Sister, you've misunderstood. Wu Qianqian hurriedly said. It's just that there's something that I can't make up my mind on. Sister, you're very meticulous. You can help me come up with ideas here. Think of something. Zi Xieching said. Oh. Chu Yang also perked up. It's like this. Wu Qianqian perked up and looked at Chu Yang meaningfully. She said, my two teachers were originally law enforcement officers. But now that the time of 10,000 years is up, the Tribulation Sword Master is about to appear. So my two teachers in the Dharma Supreme had a conflict. Both of them had different paths, and went their separate ways. Now they're already sworn enemies. Chu Yang and Zi Xieching couldn't help but perk up their ears. They knew that what Wu Qianqian said today might be the secrets that the two of them didn't know and hadn't come into contact with. Why? Chu Yang asked. Even though our paths are different, how can our 10,000 years of friendship be erased just like that? Wu Qianqian explained. It's like this. The law enforcement officers are an organization passed down by the people who founded the heavens. The mission of the law enforcement officers is to ensure the peace and stability of the heavens, to punish evil and promote good, and to protect the world. Moreover, there's an unwritten rule. Under normal circumstances, the law enforcement officers can only stand on one side. But if the Tribulation Sword Master is at a disadvantage in a battle with a big clan, the law enforcement officers must help the Tribulation Sword Master. On the other hand, if the Tribulation Sword Master is at an advantage, the law enforcement officers can just sit back and watch the big clan perish. For 10,000 years, when the first 8 Tribulation Sword Masters appeared, the law enforcement officers strictly followed this rule. They would always help the Tribulation Sword Master when he was in a difficult situation. Wu Qianqian's gaze was a little complicated. I see. Chu Yang suddenly understood. It's said that the current Dharma Supreme is the law enforcement master of the law enforcement officers from 13,000 years ago. Wu Qianqian said. When the previous Dharma Supreme reached the end of his life, he passed the position of Dharma Supreme to this Dharma Supreme and left the world at ease. Wu Qianqian emphasized the words left the world at ease, as if she was hinting at something. Or rather, she herself was also suspecting something. Left the world at ease, left the world at ease. Chu Yang slowly chewed on the words left the world at ease. The more he thought about it, he raised his eyebrows and said, so, at least when this Dharma Supreme first took over the position of Dharma Supreme, he was resolutely supporting the Tribulation Sword Master. It was only later on that there were other changes? Wu Qianqian nodded and said, after the Dharma Supreme took over, he was more capable and more prestigious than the previous Dharma Supremes. Therefore, my teacher was also willing to support him. But just some time ago, when the news of the Tribulation Sword Master's birth came out, the Dharma Supreme made the decision to go against the Tribulation Sword Master. My teacher couldn't stand such capriciousness. Moreover, their lifelong belief was to continue the responsibility of the law enforcement officers. My teacher felt that the Dharma Supreme's actions had gone against the original intention of the law enforcement officers. He was resolutely against it. If this continued, the Tribulation Sword Master of this generation would have no chance at all. Therefore, my teacher decisively left the law enforcement officers and chose another path. And this path was to become the enemy of the Dharma Supreme. Because if the Tribulation Sword Master were to die, then the entire heavenly continent would collapse again. This is very possible, Wu Qianqian said. So there's such a reason. Chu Yang let out a long sigh of relief. Zi Xieching's heart skipped a beat. She asked, your teachers are the Moon Breeze Supreme Martial Artists? Wu Qianqian nodded and said, yes. Zi Xieching's eyes narrowed. She said, but you obviously didn't cultivate the Moon Breeze as one technique? Wu Qianqian looked at her with admiration and said, sister's eyes are really sharp. You can even see this. She paused and said with a red face, but although the Moon Breeze as one technique is powerful, it requires 2 people to cultivate it together. And Zi Xieching said, isn't that simple? You can just cultivate it with Chu Yang. Moreover, if you cultivate it with Chu Yang, there will be endless benefits. Many problems can be easily solved. Wu Qianqian instantly blushed. Chapter 10:11. Endless benefits? Chu Yang asked in astonishment. That's right. Zi Xieching became serious and said, Moon breeze is one. Among all the dual cultivation techniques that I have seen, it is undoubtedly the best. Wu Qianqian didn't think much of this, but Chu Yang was deeply moved. All the techniques that Zi Xieching had seen? How many were there? But Moon breeze as one was ranked first. The Moon breeze as one heart technique clearly has room for further development. Zi Xieching said, It doesn't seem very powerful now, but for all the dual cultivation techniques in the past, because of the fact that one of the couple uses the yin to supplement the yang, or the yang to supplement the yin, one of the couple will definitely be in a weaker position and can't progress together. But the Moon breeze couple is completely balanced. The most important point is, when this technique is cultivated, one can easily come into contact with the void of the great Tao. Zi Xieching said, This is the most precious part. She looked up at Chu Yang and said, Your Tao state is different from theirs. Yours is heaven and earth, but theirs is yin and yang. Do you understand if I put it this way? I understand. Chu Yang nodded. And if the two of you cultivate together, due to your special characteristics and techniques, you don't have to worry about having children. Zi Xieching said. In this way to solve that problem, it can also promote. Zi Xieching's words were vague, but Chu Yang understood. He frowned and pondered silently. Wu Qianqian listened at the side, but she didn't quite understand. In this way, in the final stage, Feng Yuro and Yu Lingxue will be a very easy couple. Zi Xieching said. When the sky collapses and the void shatters, because others bear the heavenly power alone, but they share the burden with two people, and because of their techniques, the two of them become one. Won't it be easy to not cause the heavenly power to double? Chu Yang said, I see. So they will be like Chen Feng and Lu Yin. As long as they don't die prematurely, they will become another pair of immortal couple. Zi Xieching said lightly. Chu Yang jumped up from the chair, as if he was hit on the head. He said, Chen Feng and Lu Yin are a couple? A man and a woman? Not two men. Zi Xieching did not know whether to laugh or cry. What you said is really ridiculous. Can two men become husband and wife? Chu Yang sat down in a daze. The eternal legend of the Chongtian continent, Chen Feng and Lu Yin. They were actually a couple? Why didn't anyone know about this? Everyone knew that Chen Feng and Lu Yin were rivals. But who knew that they were husband and wife? Beside him was Wu Qianqian. His face was also filled with shock. It was because of the explosive news and Zi Xieching's profound knowledge. Now, she finally realized that Zi Xieching was not an ordinary person. Moreover, Wu Qianqian had a vague feeling that when Sister Zi mentioned her master, she seemed to be talking about a junior. Furthermore, even Chen Feng and Lu Yin did not seem to be in her eyes. Thinking of this, Wu Qianqian felt even more horrified. Could it be that she wasn't Chu Yang's sweetheart? Wu Qianqian lowered her head. No matter how thick-skinned Wu Qianqian was, she couldn't take it anymore. Think about it carefully. Zi Xieching looked at Chu Yang meaningfully. Chu Yang nodded solemnly. Sister Wu, please continue. Zi Xieching said. Wu Qianqian blushed and calmed the waves in her heart. She said, Just this morning, the Dharma Supreme is about to reach Tianji City. My two masters don't want to be enemies with others secretly. They have already rushed over to welcome the Dharma Supreme, and at the same time, to issue a letter of challenge. Issue a letter of challenge? Chu Yang asked speechlessly. Yes. Wu Qianqian frowned and said. They said that they want an open and above-board battle. An open and above-board battle? Chu Yang was even more speechless. He couldn't help but say, These two masters of yours are really a little too extreme. For such a matter, who would want to have an open and above-board battle with them? There are only two of them. The other party is the law enforcement officer of the entire Chongtian, with all the resources of a big clan that has ruled the Chongtian for tens of thousands of years. How can they have an open and above-board battle? This is what I'm worried about. Wu Qianqian sighed. If it's a truly fair battle, there won't be any tricks. We won't have to worry about anything. Life and death, victory and defeat, all the more we won't complain. But the problem is that the other party will definitely not be willing to have an open and above-board battle with them. Chu Yang frowned and said, That's right. But Master Yu thinks that there is no common ground for such a matter. Besides, Both parties have known each other for tens of thousands of years. It's not right to fight without a declaration. Wu Qianqian smiled bitterly. My master Yu is a very upright person. Chu Yang smiled and said, I can see that. People like Yu Lingxue should be the kind of people who pursue perfection in their moral integrity and conduct. They would do what they say and be above board. No matter what they do, they would have a clear conscience. Such a person's character was a natural-born hero. He would rather break than bend and die than submit. No matter what, he would never give up on his beliefs and principles. Such a person was admirable, but also pedantic. Pedantic and hateful, but also pedantic and adorable. I'm worried that the two of them will be schemed against by the Dharma Supreme and the others in the future battle. Wu Qianqian frowned and said worriedly, That's why I'm here to discuss with you in advance. Don't worry, don't doubt, they will definitely be schemed against. Chu Yang said with certainty, I'm afraid that even now, the other party is already scheming against them. He laughed bitterly. Faced with such a firm and principled enemy, if they didn't scheme against them, they would be fools. Yes. On this point, Wu Qianqian and Chu Yang absolutely had the same view. But what should they do about such a matter? Remind them? They were afraid that it would be useless. These two people had lived like this for tens of thousands of years. How could it be easy for them to change? I've already reminded them. Moreover, I've also analyzed the worst-case scenario for them. But the two masters are very stubborn. Wu Qianqian saw that Chu Yang was looking at her. She knew what he wanted to ask. So she spoke bluntly. It's a very simple matter. But to do it and change their views is as difficult as ascending to heaven. Chu Yang frowned and said, If they don't suffer a little, I'm afraid they won't change. That's right. In the current situation, we definitely can't let them suffer. Because, once they suffer, they will be consigned to eternal damnation. Wu Qianqian frowned and sighed. As long as the Dharma Supreme makes a move, then we have absolute confidence in killing them. That's why we let them suffer first, before we try to persuade them. It won't work. Chu Yang frowned, stood up and paced slowly. This is really the sorrow of good people. Chu Yang sighed. Good people were all like this. They would rather be betrayed than be betrayed. They would always have to suffer a loss before they would realize that not all sincere efforts will be exchanged for sincere returns. At that time, they would slowly become more scheming. But at that time, wasn't that the sorrow of life? What you mean is, if there's really a trap, then let them fall into a dangerous situation first, and let them understand how despicable the other party is, and how foolish and pedantic they are. In future operations, we will abandon such foolish methods? Zi Xiecheng frowned and asked. Yes. Chu Yang looked deeply at Zi Xiecheng. This matter needs to be considered at length. Zi Xiecheng nodded her head in understanding. Chu Yang faintly felt that Wu Qianqian seemed to have a faint suspicion of his identity. But it was still far from being certain. Although Chu Yang still didn't know why Wu Qianqian had such suspicions, he would definitely not reveal his identity now. This was also a form of protection for Wu Qianqian. Chu Yang, what do you think we should do? Wu Qianqian asked helplessly. Teacher is very good to me. I don't want anything to happen to them. This matter can't be rushed now, right? Chu Yang said. It's already very close. Wu Qianqian said. The medicine banquet selection will be held 3 days later. The selection will probably take 10 days. After 10 days, there will be half a month of rest. After that, it will be the semifinals. The semifinals will take 10 days. After that, there will be another rest to ensure that all the pharmacists who pass the semifinals will enter the finals in a perfect state of mind. During this process, in the end, the people of the Medicine Valley and the great supreme martial artists will use their mental strength to create a kind of aura. In this aura, the pharmacists will walk step by step. The final winner will gather the fate energy of all the top pharmacists in the entire heavenly realm. Wu Qianqian said. Under such circumstances, the champion pharmacist will personally refine the heaven-nourishing jade. And this process will mainly use mental strength and fate energy to refine the medicine. In the refining area, under the joint efforts of dozens of supreme martial artists, They will break open the great Tao void and direct the power of the heavenly way to infuse it with fate energy. Only then will the heaven-nourishing jade be formed. Then, it will be the heaven-nourishing jade. During this process, my two masters will definitely make a move to destroy it. And I'm afraid it will be the most crucial time for the heaven-nourishing jade. Wu Qianqian said. At the very most, there will be less than 3 months until the heaven-nourishing jade. I see. Chu Yang took a deep breath and his eyes flashed. Until now, he had truly understood the so-called medicine banquet's procedures. But what he didn't expect was that he actually understood it from Wu Qianqian. Using mental strength to create an aura, gathering all the fate energy into the champion, and refining the heaven-nourishing jade, actually used fate energy to refine medicine. But he didn't know how to refine medicine with fate energy. Chu Yang frowned and pondered. The sword spirit in the tribulation space was still in seclusion, and didn't care about the outside world. This couldn't give him an answer. And direct the power of the heavenly way to infuse it. Make the heaven-nourishing jade. It was so complicated. Chu Yang suddenly felt a little greedy for this direct power of the heavenly way to infuse it. The benefits of this should be quite great, right? To be continued. Chapter 10-12. Such an event. If a supreme martial artist is free, he can hold it anytime. Why must it be held once every 1,000 years? Zi Xieching asked. It must be because the amount of fate energy needed to refine the heaven-nourishing jade can only be accumulated in at least 1,000 years, Chu Yang answered softly. When Zi Xieching asked this question, she asked it deliberately. And when Chu Yang answered, it was also a deliberate answer. But this question and answer resolved the doubts in both of their hearts, turning it into affirmation. Both of them nodded at the same time. Wu Qianqian was very worried. She also knew that the best way was to let the Moon Breeze couple see the Dharma Supreme's despicableness first, and then wake up from their stupor. But, once that happened, the Moon Breeze couple would first be in danger. They would have to face the siege of at least 40 supreme martial artists. And there was also the Dharma Supreme, an unfathomable master who stood at the peak. And on her side, there was no such person who could turn the tide at the critical moment. In Wu Qianqian's mind, there were only 2 such candidates, Ning Tianya and Bu Luqing. And only these 2 people could save the Moon Breeze couple at that time. But they would have to pay a certain price. Let me think about it carefully. There may be other ways to solve this matter, Chu Yang consoled. He had already decided to do it. Not only did he have to do it, but he had to do it beautifully. On the side of Chu Yang, the Calamity Sword Master, there was a serious lack of masters. On the surface, Chu Yang seemed to be taking advantage of the big clans at every step he took. He was advancing step by step, and was toying with the big clans in the palm of his hand. However, this was built on the basis that his identity hadn't been exposed. The real comparison of strength was really pitiful. Chu Yang couldn't use the power of the Chu clan for his own use now. Otherwise, it would be gone in a flash. At the very most, the only ones who could be considered as masters around him were Wei Wuyan, Wan Renjie, Cheng Duiying and Bao Buhuan. And these 4 people were only considered as masters in comparison. And they weren't in place yet. Besides, there was only Nangong Shifeng in the intelligence agency, who was famous for his foul mouth. Zi Xieching's Tao state power would be full at any time. Then she would leave. Moreover, Chu Yang was unwilling to accept Zi Xieching's suggestion to wipe out the big clans. In this way, the ones with the highest battle power on Chu Yang's side were Yu Lingxue and Feng Yuro, who still didn't know that he was the Tribulation Sword Master. If Yu Lingxue and Feng Yuro were to be sacrificed under such circumstances, the loss would be so great that Chu Yang simply couldn't bear it. Therefore, Chu Yang had to protect these 2 people no matter what. That's good, Wu Qianqian said confidently. I'll leave this matter to you. Wu Qianqian had a natural trust in Chu Yang. It seemed that as long as Chu Yang said, I'll do it, Wu Qianqian would be completely at ease. In her eyes, there was nothing in this world that could stump Chu Yang. After that, Wu Qianqian and Zi Xieching had a long and affectionate conversation before they left reluctantly. Chu Luer had been in a deep sleep for the past few days. Ever since Zi Xieching changed her body constitution, the little girl had basically been in a daze for the past few days. She was just like the saying, sleep after eating, eat after waking up, eat after waking up, and nothing else happened. But this was a normal phenomenon, and it was because Chu Luer's body was too weak, so Chu Yang and Zi Xieching weren't too worried. She would be fine after she got used to it, after sleeping for a while. The next 2 days were calm and tranquil. Nangong Shifeng, who used to report every 3 days, didn't come, because there were obviously fewer people coming these few days. Those who were supposed to come had all arrived. The information of all the people that Nangong Shifeng gathered had already piled up 3 feet in front of Chu Yang. It was very detailed. Sometimes Chu Yang even suspected. What method did Nangong Shifeng use to get all this information? One must know that some of the information could even be said to be top secret. Chu Yang only found out about this question when he asked Nangong Shifeng once. It turned out that this guy was only in charge of finding out the names of people, and then bringing the names to a secret place in Tianji City, called Omniscient News Pavilion. He only needed to fork out purple crystals to get the information of these people, and everything would be in his hands. No one knew who opened this Omniscient News Pavilion. It was extremely mysterious, only selling information, and the price wasn't low. It had a good reputation, as if there wasn't any information in this world that he didn't know. Chu Yang was surprised, and also a little amused that there was such a thing. So Chu Yang gave Nangong Shifeng another sum of purple crystals to buy information. He couldn't possibly let Nangong Shifeng pay for it with his own money. In the past few days, Lan Chang'e secretly found Chu Yang, gave him a packet of medicine, and asked him to find an opportunity to put it in Wu Qianqian's medicine. This gave Chu Yang a clear feeling that Lan Chang'e was going to take action. Other than that, there was no movement from the Zhuge clan, Yi clan, and the other big clans. Since the arrival of the Dharma Supreme, the whole Tianji city became clear. Walking around the whole city, there weren't many people scolding people, not to mention fighting. Everyone from the Zhuge family heaved a sigh of relief when they saw how quiet the situation was. But at the same time, they knew that none of the big clans were easy to deal with. The silence during this period of time definitely didn't mean that they had given up. So the security in the dark became even tighter. This evening, from the city gate of Tianji City, a person walked in. This person was dressed in a long green robe, and his face was gentle. Even though he was walking normally, he revealed an indescribable free and easy feeling. Regardless of whether it was his face, temperament, or even his figure, he gave people a feeling of being at ease, as if nothing would bother him. This kind of free and easy feeling even included life and death. Absolutely detached from worldly affairs, Meng Charan finally arrived at Tianji City at a moderate pace. When the sky had just darkened, 3 figures flew over from afar. This time, I have really used too much time for my closed-door training. I wonder if fourth brother is anxious from waiting. I really didn't expect that the breakthrough this time would be so difficult, even though our cultivation had already reached it first, and had already surpassed it, said the person in front. Yes, even now, we only know half of it. Looks like we can only fully master it through the baptism of battle. Fourth brother is in this city. I believe he must be anxiously waiting for us, said another person. Cough cough, big senior brother and second senior brother are right, said another person in agreement. The 3 of them swept across the land like shooting stars, entered the city gate, and disappeared into the crowd. After a while, when the moon rose diagonally in the sky, another person rushed over from afar. This person was skinny and his face was haggard, just like a walking corpse. His face was covered with horrifying scars. He had a sheathed sword, so ordinary that it seemed like it would disappear in the wind at any time. It was unremarkable, but he didn't carry it on his back, nor did it hang at his waist. Instead, he just carried it with his right hand. From his skeleton, one could tell that this person was originally very burly. One really didn't know what could cause a person to become so skinny in such a short period of time. He still came. This person looked at the Tianji city gate numbly and sighed. I have never owed anyone anything in my life. Little brother has done me a great favor. Now that he is going to stand out in the medicine banquet, How can I not help him? After little brother is done here, I will go to the ends of the earth to hunt down that evil thief, to avenge my wife and child, to avenge myself. On this person's horrifying face, a pair of eyes flashed with extreme hatred as he gritted his teeth. Under his agitation, his scarred face became even more twisted and horrifying. His eyes flashed, and he took a few deep breaths. Then he silently entered Tianji City step by step. The moon was high in the sky. Heaven and earth were already in silence. From afar, another 3 figures flew over. Among the 3 people, one was burly. Even though one couldn't see his face clearly in the dark, his figure still made one feel that he was as tall as a mountain. Every step he took, it was as if a mountain was moving. Such majesty. This was a natural aura. Only natural heroes could bring out such a majestic aura unconsciously. An insufferably arrogant spirit. The person beside him had a slender figure and fluttering hair. She should be a girl. On his left, another person's posture was rather strange. As he walked, he looked like a big monkey jumping forward, but also like a bird flying clumsily. We are finally here. In front of everyone, that person stood still and laughed. He said, "This journey is really fucking satisfying. The awe-inspiring power of our Hall of 4 and 3 has truly started to spread throughout the world from this journey." At the side, that skinny and shriveled big monkey-like young man rolled his eyes and said, "What's there to be unhappy about? Almost all the people we met along the way were beaten down by you. Too barbaric. No matter what, you should let me practice, but you almost took them all by yourself." That person smiled and said, "Didn't you practice those few times when we met high-level martial saints? What's there to lose? Fourth brother Dong, I will fight it out with you." That young man cried out in grief and indignation. "That was purely torture. What is called practice? I say, fourth brother Dong, you clearly know that you can't afford to offend them, but you still went up to provoke them. You caused me to be beaten to death 3 times along the way. Do you still have a conscience? Anyway, you can't be beaten to death." The girl at the side who had been silent all this while smiled gently and said, "What does it matter how many times you are beaten to death? After they leave, we will take your corpse away. After a while, you will come back to life and your strength will improve. Fourth brother, we are helping you cultivate." That skinny and shriveled young man wanted to cry but had no tears. "Making me die again and again, helping me cultivate like this. I have seen through the 2 of you. When I see boss, I will definitely complain about you. That burly young man laughed and said, "Fourth brother, let's make a bet. Do you think boss will believe what the 2 of us say? Or will he believe you, a guy who has always been famous for being a petty thief and has a glib tongue?" That young man instantly became dejected. He looked up to the sky and sighed. "I have really met the wrong person. Don't talk nonsense, let's go in. Let's see if we can find someone to fight again tonight. I feel like I am going to break through again." The burly young man laughed, and the 3 of them entered the city gate at the same time. Chapter 10:13. Late at night, a bright moon hung in the sky. Diwu Qingrou's small courtyard was surrounded by the supreme martial artist's divine senses. "Is everything ready?" Diwu Qingrou asked softly. In front of him the elder nodded. Yes, tomorrow is the start of the medicine banquet." Diwu Qingrou's eyes were deep. "How are the reactions of the big clans?" The elder laughed softly. "Other than the local Zhuge clan, Cheng clan and Li clan, the other 7 clans are all eager to make a move. They are very interested in the news of the divine clan elder." "That's good." Diwu Qingrou smiled softly and said, "It's not that the Cheng clan is completely uninterested. They are forced by the situation and have no choice but to keep a low profile, because they have already lost too many men to the Moon Breeze couple. Therefore they already feel that they can't afford to lose. But once things get out of hand, the Cheng clan will naturally make a move. Even if they don't make a move, there will be others who will find trouble with them." Diwu Qingrou smiled softly. "And the Li clan is in a precarious situation now. Even if they don't make a move, others won't let them off. So, the Li clan will also make a move." The elder said, "Yes, the situation is already set. The stage has already been set up. We are only waiting for someone to perform on the stage. Wuxia smiled. That's right. My main job is only to set up this stage. We don't need to care about other things. We only need to wait quietly, just setting up the stage and not performing. The old man was startled. He couldn't help but frown and remind her. Qingru, you're wrong. Although we've already lured them in, things still need a fuse. Even if it's going to become a prairie fire in the end, it still needs a spark to ignite it. That's right. However, this was just a spark. It must not be ignited from our hands. If we were to ignite it, it would only burn the Diwu clan into pieces first. Then, even if the plan succeeds, it would be useless and would only benefit others. There was a mysterious smile on Wuxia's face. I don't understand. Who can replace us? That elder racked his brains. If I didn't calculate wrongly, that person, it should have been prepared long ago. What he needs now is for us to finish setting up the stage, that's all. Wuxia's eyes flashed. As long as the news of us setting up the stage is spread out. If the flames of war were to rise continuously, the large clans would be reduced to a nest of pigs in a short period of time. The old man blinked his eyes in confusion, not knowing what he was talking about. There was an alliance. But I've always been by Qingru's side, so how come I didn't notice? Great-granduncle, if I remember correctly, in another 10 days I'll be back. At the beginning of the 12th lunar month, which is the day of the medicine banquet preliminaries, it should be Big Brother's birthday. Wuxia smiled mysteriously. Yes, it's hard for you to remember this. The old man chuckled. Big Brother is almost 10 years old this year, but he hasn't had a proper birthday celebration yet. Wuxia sighed and said, this time he has me, his younger brother, to celebrate for him. The old man was even more confused. We were just talking about serious business. Why did you suddenly change the topic to birthday noodles? Wasn't this change too sudden? Wuxia pondered and said, spread the news tomorrow that the Diwu clan has booked the entire Shuiyu restaurant for my big brother Wuqiang's 10th birthday. What? The old man was stunned. I've lived for thousands of years. I haven't had such a grand birthday celebration. Your big brother is only 10 years old, and you're already having a birthday celebration? Also, I, Wuxia, will cover all the expenses for my big brother's 10th birthday this time. Wuxia said in a heavy tone. This sentence must be passed out to show our brotherhood. You'll cover all? The old man was shocked. This is not a small amount. I can still afford this little amount of purple crystals. Wuxia said casually. And this money is paid by the clan. Paid by the clan? The old man was confused. He was about to faint. Paid by the clan, but in your name? Of course. Wuxia said without any guilt. I'm completely dizzy. What's going on? The old man held his forehead with one hand and asked dizzily. And it must be a grand celebration. Wuxia said. When the time comes, we'll invite an opera troupe to set up a stage for a performance. So from tomorrow onwards we'll start setting up the stage. Set up a stage for a performance? So grand? The old man said dizzily. Of course. The 10th birthday celebration. Wuxia waved his hand. This matter is settled. From tomorrow onwards, we'll start spreading the news and inviting guests and friends. When the time comes, we'll watch the show at Shuiyu restaurant. Seeing that the old man still wanted to ask questions, Wuxia frowned and sighed deeply. You don't need to ask for the reason. You just need to do as I say. Okay. The old man agreed in confusion. Don't forget that everything is funded by me. You must publicize this matter to the best of your ability. Wuxia was still not at ease. So he warned again. Okay. The old man agreed and left. Wuxia looked at his back and couldn't help but frown with a headache. He sighed and muttered, so tired. On the second day, from early morning, Tianji City started to become chaotic. It was like a pot of porridge. As the sky brightened and the sun rose, it gradually became steaming hot. Chuyang ended his breathing and meditation and stood up. He didn't prepare much. He just took out a small package from the tribulation space, carried it, and was about to leave. Zixieqing's voice came from next door. I won't accompany you today. Today is the most important day for Luer to be reborn. I'll stay here to protect her. Okay. Chu Yang agreed. At this moment someone asked loudly, Brother Chu, are you ready? It was Han Sharon's voice. Yes, yes. Chu Yang agreed and walked out quickly. He opened the door of the orchard palace and saw Han Shaoran in a neat black robe. He stood outside with his hands behind his back and nodded at him with a smile. Today is the first day of the medicine banquet. I'll bring you there. Let's enter the preliminaries. Han Shaoran smiled. Chu Yang laughed. Brother, the first round of preliminaries is a competition of heavenly treasures. There's nothing special about it. Are you ready? Han Shaoran said. If you're not confident, I've specially brought a 5,000-year-old blood mushroom. It should be enough. I've already made my own preparations. Chu Yang smiled faintly. Moreover, I've prepared a portion for you. Prepared a portion for me. Han Shaoran widened his eyes strangely. I've got 2 scarlet fruits. One of them is to be used to enter the medicine banquet as a stepping stone. The other one, it's for you. Although this scarlet fruit can't cure you completely, it can make you feel more comfortable. Moreover, it can also last a little longer. Chu Yang smiled slightly. Han Shaoran shook his head disapprovingly. Brother, it's not that I want to nag at you, but you've underestimated the medicine banquet. There are tens of thousands of pharmacists gathered here. And these people actually dared to participate in the medicine banquet. Who doesn't have any rare goods? I'm afraid it's impossible to enter the medicine banquet with just 1 scarlet fruit. It's naturally impossible for ordinary scarlet fruits. But what about the black-blooded scarlet fruit? Chu Yang smiled mysteriously and said, I got this scarlet fruit from the black-blood forest. Black-blooded scarlet fruit? Han Shaoran was stunned. The soil in the black-blood forest was 100 times harder than outside. The value of the elixirs that grew there was definitely 100 times more than outside. And the black-blooded scarlet fruit was even more priceless. It was a typical heavenly treasure. And a top-grade one. An ordinary scarlet fruit needed at least 100 years to bloom and 50 years to mature. 150 years. But it was definitely not the case in the black-blood forest. That was to say, in the black-blood forest, this number was 100 times more. The scarlet fruit could only mature. That was to say 15,000 years. But how could the 15,000 years in the black-blood forest be compared to the 15,000 years in the outside world? The difference was like heaven and earth. You got the black-blooded scarlet fruit? Han Shaoran thought of Chu Yang's journey and suddenly had an idea. You didn't come from the Shao clan's special passage, but came from the Black Blood Forest? The Shao clan has a special passage? Chu Yang felt dizzy. Han Shaoran was stunned. The two of them looked at each other and smiled bitterly. You're really audacious. You actually came out from the Black Blood Forest. Han Shaoran shook his head and sighed. And you even got the black-blooded scarlet fruit. Your luck is really too good. Haha, Chu Yang smiled and said. And it's not an ordinary black-blooded scarlet fruit. It's a top-grade exquisite snow scarlet fruit. Han Shaoran's eyes popped out. Exquisite snow scarlet fruit? Chu Yang smiled mischievously. He stretched out his hand from his bag and took out a purple crystal box. Then he threw it over. Old brother Han, this is something that took 15,000 years to grow. Quickly eat it. Han Shaoran hurriedly caught it and was shocked. This is a heavenly treasure that only matured after 15,000 years. You're throwing it away just like that? Chu Yang said indifferently. What's the big deal? Once I throw it out, it's yours. It's not mine anymore. Even if it's broken, it's yours. Why can't I bear to? Han Shaoran's mouth twitched a few times. He was a little angry, but there was nothing he could do. This scarlet fruit was born from the scarlet fruit tree that Chu Yang got from the Black Blood Forest. There were 30 of them in total. Chu Yang only took out 2 of them. What's there to feel bad about? When he got the scarlet fruit tree, it was only green in color. But after it entered the tribulation space, the sword spirit made use of the characteristics of the tribulation space to speed up the ripening of the fruits. Han Shaoran felt a little bad and said, Brother, you're taking out such a heaven-defying treasure for this medicine banquet's preliminary selection. It's too extravagant and wasteful. Hee, I'm almost done making up for what I owe. I finally felt a little relieved. I didn't dare to ask for monthly votes to make up for the extra chapters. I'm almost done making up for the extra chapters so that I can ask for monthly votes. It's the 23rd today, and I've already updated 10 chapters with close to 200,000 words. But many people are still complaining that the updates aren't good enough. Please understand me. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.